All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our wonderful Twitch channel called Can We Play Already? We are going to be introducing today the super awesome new Dungeons and Dragons book that came out just a few days ago called Guildmasters Guide to Ravnica. Now, Ravnica is a super cool setting that actually originates from Magic the Gathering, which is another project of the company known as Wizards of the Coast. Now, Magic the Gathering is a super cool game, super cool card game, very, very popular. And it actually has a pretty in-depth story, and it involves, these cool mages that have these powers and they can traverse the multiverse and visit all sorts of cool planes of existence, and chaos ensues, of course. And one of the most popular of these planes is Ravnica. My name is Patrick. I am a gamer, a game enthusiast, and a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons. And I am going to be joined today with my wonderful friend here, Ben.
Hello.
So Ben and I are going to be looking at this super cool book in more detail and give you guys a little bit of an intro about it. So maybe you guys will be interested in getting it yourself and maybe starting your own campaign in this super cool setting.
Actually, that's one thing we should mention is we're gonna have the campaign.
Mm-hmm. We are going to
actually play it.
Yeah, we're actually going to be starting. So this book actually not only gives you lots of tools on how to make a campaign in this setting, but also gives you a super easy to start off with adventure. It's just a small little one-off. It can work for, like I said, a one-off. Or it can serve as a small introduction that can later lead into a much more involved campaign.
So like kind of a good introduction to the setting, as well as, we'll see if we continue on with a full campaign, but at the very least, we plan to do a stream next Thursday.
Next
Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. So November 27th. That is when we are planning on actually having the adventure. So I'm going to meet up with some of our friends that are interested in this setting and want to make some cool adventures that would work in this particular plane of existence. And then we're all going to get together and, mess shit up.
So why don't you go ahead and tell us more about the book and sort of what it has in it, what it offers, and what Ravnica is all about.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start off by talking about Ravnica itself. So if you look down at my open book here, you'll see this is actually a small section of the entire plane of Ravnica. So when I say plane, I really mean like a planet. It's just like a huge world. And Ravnica is unique because it is a city that encompasses the entire planet. So it's this huge megapolis, essentially. Now, you would think a setting that is entirely urban would be kind of, bland and entirely one-sided, but I assure you that is not at all the case. It is, varied. It is so cool. And I've read through this book, the entire thing, and I am so excited to actually get started with this. So this section here is actually just the 10th district. So the way that Ravnica is organized is basically into these different districts. Originally, it was just 10 of them. The 10th district is the most important one because it's basically where the guild halls are held. And the guild halls are basically the capitals of the 10 guilds.
So this is kind of like the 10th district is kind of like the capital city, and these are like their corporate headquarters. They're all housed in the main district here.
Exactly. So the second most important thing about this setting is the guilds themselves. So the city itself, the megapolis, is the important part, and then the guilds that actually run the city are the second most important thing.
That's the setting, basically. You've got both the plane of existence, then this big city, but really the guilds are intrinsic to what the setting is about.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not at all like the guilds in the typical Dungeons and Dragons settings. They are much more powerful, and each one is completely unique and has their own goals and their own philosophies that they follow. And the people who are in them, they're in there for a particular reason, right? Now, there are also quite a few people in the plane of Ravnica that are guildless, which means they don't actually belong to any single guild, but even though they might not belong to one directly, they are still constantly interacting with them. It's unavoidable because they control everything, essentially.
The guilds really are. They're kind of like they're both the government and
they're the government, they're the banks, they're the religions, they're the science institutions, they're the teachers, they're the librarians, they're a lot. So they're a big deal. We're going to go over the 10 guilds in a bit as well, in a bit more detail about what each one's role is and what their goals are, because, you know, you can imagine that in this giant city where these powerful organizations hold sway, they're constantly trying to, you know, get the upper hand on their other guilds,
so
their counterparts.
Adventure hook's already built in.
Absolutely. Like every guild views another guild, usually with some mild contempt. You know, they'll cooperate depending on what the issue might be in the city or in a different part of the city, but usually it's guild first.
So maybe that's a good jumping off point to talk about how it's going to play in. So this is a Magic the Gathering setting that they've translated into Dungeons and Dragons. So, you know, it might work in Magic to have all these different guilds and competing because you might play with a particular card set or something like that. But, you know, in terms of D&D, you have to have a party. So you're going to have people maybe in different guilds. And how is that going to work for those relationships?
That's a good question. And the book has a section on how to build an adventure, and it specifically tells you, you know, what kind of adventure you can build depending on which guild each player is a part of. Because, like I said, even though they might have varying agendas and different goals, there might be short-term goals that they share, and then they can work together for the sake of completing that, right?
So that's one thing that's in the book, is they actually walk you through how to organize your party depending on the makeup of individual players' choices. So they don't take away any player choice. They really just give you tools as a dungeon master to address the iterations.
Absolutely. So they still want to make sure that the players, you know, pick whichever guild that they really want to, and, you know, really feel like they're in control, but still makes sense within the campaign setting. So so we'll go over the guilds in more detail in a bit, but a bit more about the city itself first. So Ravnica, like I mentioned, originally was just this huge city that encompassed these 10 districts. Now, eventually, the city grew so much that other cities on the planet eventually just got absorbed into them. So imagine if eventually one day New York keeps building and building outwards, and eventually it builds so far out that it eventually absorbs Chicago. Like it's kind of that same idea.
So amalgamation to the extreme.
Every single mayor now of every city has to just, you know, is like beholden to now this one city council that is full of these crazy guilds. The setting itself, you know, is a lot like Coruscant. You know, the city itself is a lot like Coruscant. You know, it's a citywide planet
for the Star Wars
or a planet-wide city. Yeah, but it's, you know, not sci-fi so much as it is fantasy, and, you know, there's some science fantasy in it. There's a lot of steampunk elements and stuff as well.
I think you mentioned airships.
There are airships. There's like an underground sort of subway system, but, you know, all magically run instead of just pure scientific principles. And magic in this setting is very prominent. It's not like, you know, in some other D&D settings where like someone doing magic is like, wow, like so amazing. Here it's like, yeah, obviously you do magic, so does everyone.
It's kind of magic is so ingrained in the fundamentals of, you know, your day-to-day existence that you have to, you know, it's great that you can incorporate that in terms of a setting. I think that's interesting because, like, like you said, not every setting addresses that. You know, what are the real consequences of widespread magic use? You would build a subway with magic, not with technology. Yeah, and a lot of the problems that arise because of that are, you know, because magic is so prominent and is wielded so, you know, haphazardly a lot of the time that it can create, you know, some issues, especially when different guilds choose to wield their magic
in different ways and for different reasons, right? Uh, like, I guess I could give a short history about Ravnica and like the world itself, just like a really brief one.
Yeah, that sounds good. Coming from D&D, especially just playing 5th edition, I'm not really much of a Magic the Gathering person, so I didn't even realize that they had sort of these stories and lore that went behind things. I thought it was just a lot of theming in the cards, but really there's a whole story element going on to draw from, and I guess that's what this book is trying to do, is sort of D&D-ize that story.
Well, and it made a lot of sense, I think, for Wizards of the Coast to eventually do this sort of thing because, Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons are both from the same company, and they're both very popular. So they thought, hey, it kind of makes sense to bring these two things together. I've played some Magic the Gathering very casually, but I've always been really interested in the lore because it follows, these really cool characters. I mentioned before the Planeswalkers. So in Magic the Gathering, in canon, when you're playing a game against a friend or something, you're both Planeswalkers. And those cards represent spells and, creatures and people you've met along your journey that you're able to, summon and, attack one another, right? Now, this particular setting of Ravnica has always been really popular because of the city itself and because of these 10 guilds. Within Magic, each one of the guilds represents 2 colors of mana. So, they're basically a 2-color combination that form the core philosophy of the guild itself. But now, how did this plane come to be? How did these 10 guilds gain power? Why are they the ones that run this entire city planet thing? Basically, over 10,000 years ago, there was war all over the place, all over the planet, and it eventually seemed like the 10 most powerful factions in this war were going to destroy one another. And every time that, they would strike a blow to their enemies, they would notice that they were starting to get a lot of ghosts all over the place, which, no one wants to live with a bunch of ghosts. Ghosts. Oh, so spooky. And so they're just like, okay, eventually this plane is going to be nothing but a bunch of undead, which, not fun for anyone.
Kind of problematic, but depends. I think I heard that some of the guilds in this actually use undead.
Oh, they do. Absolutely. And, for some of them, that's not so much of a problem, but, having too much of a good thing can still become a bad thing, even for these guilds. So what these 10 guilds eventually decided is that they would come together and basically come to an agreement that they would no longer try and destroy one another for the sake of Ravnica. And so the 10 original Guildmasters, called Payrunes, came together, and a lot of them were super powerful, some of them immortal beings. And they came together and they signed what was called the Guild Pact. The Guild Pact was a magically binding contract that gave each one of these 10, factions a role to play in Ravnica society. And the guild also prevented any one guild from gaining too much power over another and from openly warring with one another.
So openly warring, that's a kind of an important distinction, yes. It sounds like.
So for the next 10,000 years, these guilds, controlled all of Ravnica, essentially all of Ravnica's society. But even though the Guild Pact prevented them, like you very, very astutely prevented them from fighting with one another openly and, causing all-out war, they still find ways to little loopholes and anything they can try to get the upper hand, because essentially they all have such different philosophies from one another, and they all disagree on how Ravnica should be governed and how Ravnica should be, that they can't see eye to eye for too long.
Right. So they are both their own independent interest, but they're also sort of, they make up the government and they run the city, because each guild also, not only do they have different philosophy, but they have a different purpose,
yeah,
and sort of focus. You mentioned like some are like enforcers, some are healers, some are bankers.
Yeah.
You got the spread there.
So it's something that is pretty much essential. Like almost every guild is essential in some way or another. There are some that not so much, but essentially each guild had to be in place because each guild was also there to keep another guild in check.
Right, so there's a balancing factor.
Yeah, and that was very important for when the guild pack was first made. Now, skip 10,000 years, the city grows to encompass the entire planet. The guilds are still very much in control, have a ton of power, and the 10,000th anniversary of the signing of the guild pack comes along, called the Decamillennial. And unfortunately, a number of events happen within the Magic the Gathering lore and the story where the guild pack is actually destroyed.
Oh no.
Not great. So now open war, guilds are falling apart, people are dying on the streets everywhere. It's chaos. Now, a lot of the guildless, so the people who didn't belong to a certain guild at this point, basically because they've felt disenfranchised for a pretty long time, being under the thumb of these super powerful and ultimately very corrupt organizations, that they started to, say, screw off with the guilds. Eventually, though, the guilds started coming back into power, and there turns out that there was this contingency plan put in place by the original guildmaster, the Payroon of one of the guilds, the Azorius Senate. So the Payroon of this guild, called Azor the First, designed a contingency plan just in case the guild pack were ever to be destroyed. And again, through complicated whatever, go read the books.
Magic the Gathering lore.
Magic the Gathering lore. It's really interesting, but very long. The guild pack is reforged, but now it's actually within a certain individual. And it's a really popular character from Magic the Gathering. He's a planeswalker named Jace. Super cool mind mage guy. Actually, his face is in the book here. It's actually right here if you want to show there, Ben. So this guy here,
okay,
this is Jace.
That's Jace. And
so he's the guild pack.
He is the guild pack.
He is the guild pack.
So what if we get rid of Jace?
Well, Jace, because he's a planeswalker, he's not on Ravnica often.
Oh, so he just fucked off.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'll come back. And actually, on the second page here is actually a letter from a very important member of the Azorius Senate. And it's basically a letter being like, you need to get your shit together, Jace, because the city's falling apart. We need our guild pact here to keep the peace, or else we're all going to tear each other to shreds.
So this is kind of... this is the first page of the book. This is kind
of
the instigation, I am guessing, of sort of where D&D is picking up the lore and
exactly
creating the setting. So we're in this time frame, 10,000 years later. Jace is the guild pack, and trouble is a brewing in Ravnica, and we might need some. We might need
some brave adventurers to try and do something about it, right? Now, because Jace is, seen as not present very often, the guilds, even though he's not there, they're still kind of fairly cautious, not causing too much trouble. But for how long? Things are bubbling to the surface, and eventually, if Jace doesn't come back and use his guild pack powers to keep the peace, things are not looking great. But that also means there's lots of opportunity for really cool stuff to happen and really cool adventure hooks for dungeon masters to come up with.
Nice. Yeah, you actually mentioned there is a one-shot introductory adventure. So where should we start, though? Should we go through the guilds, or should we talk about the adventure? Maybe show off the book a little bit.
I think the first thing I'm going to do is maybe talk about the actual races first. And that's because I want to do that first because the races are very different than what you would typically find in the dungeon and in a typical Dungeons and Dragons setting.
Right. So there's new races in this book specifically. So that's exciting for, people who are looking for new D&D material.
And you can put them in your own, if you have your own setting and you just want to use another cool race, you're free to do that as well. You don't need to have it in Ravnica either.
Even if you're running, say, in the Forgotten Realms, because the idea is it's a multiverse and there's these there's plane shift spells and other things, it's entirely possible to pull one of these races from this plane now that it's kind of been brought into in the regular D&D multiverse. You can you can have a what are they, Loxodon? They're
Loxodon. Those are my fave, and we're not no spoiler, but they're really cool because they're also one of my favorite animals in real life.
They're like an elephant person.
They're elephant people.
Yeah, but I mean, forget about spoilers. We're spoiling everything in this.
Yeah,
stream.
You're right. Who cares? Yeah. Okay, so let's get started on the races. Let me flip through some pages here.
Yeah.
So, of course, you have your humans. Humans make up the largest population, essentially, on Ravnica. Most
D&D settings, really.
Most D&D settings, yeah. But Ravnica is no different. Humans play a big part, and they're found in pretty much every single one of the guilds. But we also have our elves. So elves are still present in Ravnica, but the elves are a little bit different. So you know how high elves are always seen as so hoity-toity and
very highfalutin.
Yeah, exactly. Very, kind of distant and hard to approach and often kind of snobbish. Well, elves in here they're pretty different. So the 3 main races of elves are present. We have the high elves, we have the wood elves, and we have the dark elves. But they look different, and their philosophies are all pretty different.
Is this because of Magic the Gathering as kind of a setting unto itself treat elves differently, or is it this specific to Ravnica as a setting that elves are like this in Ravnica?
Well, I think it's partially Magic the Gathering as a whole, because in general, elves in Magic the Gathering are usually green aligned or sometimes black. So that's the colors of mana again for those of you who play Magic.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about what that's all about, because I understand that sort of matters a lot in terms of how Magic is approached in Magic the game, but in terms of D&D, I think they more translate philosophically with these guilds rather than kind of like a strict
direct.
We didn't have to change the magic system in D&D to fit Ravnica. It kind of worked in the existing system, but there's sort of like the color wheel is in Magic is more of like an approach, and the backgrounds is kind of
exactly. So you're absolutely right that they didn't change the entire Magic system in Dungeons and Dragons to fit the color wheel from Magic the Gathering. It is really just it's more based on the type of magic that you do, depending on which color you're associated with within Magic the Gathering. So the 5 colors are white, black, red, green, and blue. So green is associated with nature. It's associated with growth and all those things. Lots of big creatures in those ones typically. We have blue that all is about mind and illusion and enchantments and control. Also often associated with water and with air. We have red, which is, chaos. It's fury, it's emotion, and it's often associated also with fire and with inorganic earth, so like rocks and dirt and stuff like that, golems.
Sort of sounds like your star signs. Like, are you a red? Are you an Aries?
Are you a red? Yeah, I mean especially these guilds, because these guilds combine 2 of the colors together to make your philosophy. You could totally be like, oh, I'm such a cynic. Oh, I'm such a Orzhov. Like
that's actually funny, because I heard some of the D&D creators sort of talking about that. As a sort of like a Myers-Briggs test. What kind of guild is your personality? Where do you relate? Where do you fit in?
Oh, absolutely. And I fully support people, trying to figure that out. I know which guild, and I'm going to talk about it when we get to the guilds in a bit, but I definitely have a favorite guild, and that I think I would probably be in if they were a real thing. Sadly, they are not, but
so we got green, we got red,
so
green, got blue.
Yeah, and then white is all about protection. It's about community. It's about healing. it's like, you know, angels
I've
and
seen the light.
knights and yeah, exactly. And black is, you know, kind of the opposite of that. It's about death. It's about the undead. It's about corruption, stuff like that. Now, when you combine these two colors together, though, you can create pretty interesting combinations, and that's where the guilds come in. Now, different races are also often associated with different colors and the philosophies that they are a part of. So, green in Magic the Gathering, like I mentioned, a lot of elves are usually found in green. Because in Magic the Gathering, pretty much all elves, even high elves, are very, very closely tied to nature. And that's true in Ravnica. So, all three of the subraces of elves, even though there are subraces and usually found in different guilds, all of them revere and respect nature, but just in different ways.
Now they have a lot of nature in this big city life. Like, is there a central park or something where they can go?
That's
to
a really good
connect?
question. So yeah, because it is an entire city, part of, you know, trying to maintain the balance is making sure that there's still greenery, because you obviously need that for things like oxygen, and also for eating. So yeah, they have places, they have gardens, they have farms, and
Even dedicated guilds who would kind of like look after ensuring the green liveliness, and you know that
it's still present.
the concrete jungle doesn't take.
And there are
over too
also a
much.
lot of ruins, and a lot of ruined parts of the city. Nature has started to reclaim it, and then there are guilds that, you know, like to stay in those ruined parts of the city to, you know, protect it and maybe make more of the city just like it.
Very cool. So I can already see there's so much to do in this setting, and like, you know, the city is vast and varied.
Yeah.
And you know, we're barely just scratching the surface here. So we have some Twitch viewers. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Hi.
Captain Skylark says, I want to be green.
Oh yeah, the green guilds are some of my favorites too, because I mean, in real life, you know, my background is in biology. You know, I studied evolution and stuff like that, and you know, I work in an aquarium with a bunch of animals, so I love nature. So I am always gravitate towards green as well, and the green guilds are some of my favorite in this setting. Now back to the elves. So the three elves, so the high elves, usually they're found in one of the guilds called the Simic Combine. We'll talk more about them. That's actually my favorite guild, the Simic. They are super bioscientists sort of thing.
Right, I heard about them. They're kind of like biotech almost.
Very biotech. They're very, very cool. Then we have the Wood Elves. They are also in this setting, the Wood Elves, they're called the Silhana. The Silhana, they're usually found in the Selesnya Conclave, which they're very hippie-esque in that sense. They're like, oh, you know, balance with nature and civilization.
And conclave kind of gives it away. That's the kind of it almost sounds like commune.
Oh, you have no idea. You'll see. Yeah, we'll get into that too. And then we have the Dark Elves called, what are they called? The Devkarin. And they live underground, just like, you know, in the Underdark. If you think the city of Ravnica on the surface is big, the Undercity is much more vast, because, you know, a lot of the city was built on top of each other.
So there's like an underground city, but it's not like the Underdark, the setting necessarily, or does it kind of sort of translate?
There definitely are some elements, but a lot more ruins, right? Because it's all built on top of each other, but a lot of it has been reclaimed by, you know, the things that creep around in the dark, like fungus and bugs and stuff like that.
Right. So it's but the Underdark, you know, that's its own plane of existence. So this is within the plane of Ravnica still.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like underground, and you know, our drow, our dark elves, you know, it's not drow culture in the Underdark.
No.
It's Drakkar,
The Devkarin.
and
they have their own unique culture. They do not look at all like drows either. They have similar skin tones to humans, you know, just, you know, from very pale to very, very dark. But they often have dark hair, but they are still very sensitive to light, just like the drow are.
Because they've been underground
for so
lot,
long. Yeah. So that's pretty much it for any of the races you'd find in a typical D&D book. You also have half elves.
Wait, okay, I was gonna say. I mean, we got half elves. That's fine, but
Elves,
no dwarves,
no dwarves,
no gnomes,
no gnomes.
no halflings.
Nope. That's it. So the rest are all new.
Wow. So throw away your player's handbook. You only need this book.
You might still need them for the classes.
Yeah.
Right. Crap.
All right.
So next we have our centaurs here. So centaurs, if you've always wanted to play a human horse hybrid, which I know I have because that's super cool, you can finally be one. Now centaurs are all about the nature, so they're often found in green, green color as well. We have some that are very kind of anarchists, like they want nature to just come back and take over all over again so that they have places to roam. But there are some that are more peaceful. But all in all, they are very community driven. And they're old souls in a lot of ways. They're pretty cool.
Now, I saw the UA article that introduced the races back in like August or so, I think. So I might be remiss to address, the fact that all the creatures are medium sized. I think that was kind of a contentious point. So, everyone was aching for some large sized creatures, and it sort of made sense to say a big ass horse would be a large creature, but I think they were just a little concerned about breaking some of the mechanics. When you have a large creature, you take up 4 squares, and it might be a little tricky.
And I totally get where the developers were coming from with this. I mean, just having a creature in this setting that it takes up so much more space, like it makes it way more difficult.
Just to run, as a DM and as a player, you get all the kinds of different advantages and whatnot. But
it's bigger than your average medium, it's still medium.
You fit within a 5x5 square, nonetheless.
Yeah, exactly.
You very fit the whole square.
Yeah, very much so. We have our goblins. They're not medium; they are small, but they are mighty. They are pretty tough.
Now, is there a goblin stat block in this book? Because I think they were in Volos, but
and I think it's slightly different in this.
Even slightly different, a slightly different goblin?
Yeah, so they look different as well. They have this warty green skin and big noses, and their arms and legs are very, very long, but they kind of are hunched back, and but they're pretty tough as well. If they attack a creature that is a size larger than them, they can do extra damage, once per short or long rest, I believe, which is pretty nifty.
Now they're small, right? So
they are small.
That gives you lots of choice.
That's most
pretty
things.
Much everything is bigger than you, and there's no gnomes or halflings or dwarves, so pretty much everyone you're going to be encountering in this setting is going to be medium size or larger.
Yeah, so you have an advantage definitely in that sense. Now, the goblins, lore-wise here, they're not necessarily evil. Actually, quite a few of them are contributing members of society and are found in various guilds, often red-associated guilds. So guilds that are fiery and passionate because, they're pretty zealous. They are usually pretty, emotionally wild.
So these goblins are kind of like the primal type of goblin, as opposed to the Harry Potter banker type of goblin.
Yeah, definitely not that kind of goblin at all. Much more. They're not going to be found in the banking, the Orzhov guild. They're much more likely to be like in Izzet, which are the crazy mad scientists that like to blow stuff up. Not because they're mean. It's just because they like blowing stuff up. It's fun.
So more like the Warcraft version of goblin.
That's a good example. The Warcraft version. They're also kind of usually looked down upon by other guilds, or other races. A lot of them are guildless. Actually, most goblins are guildless, and quite a few of them are part of gangs. So they do not belong to a single guild, but they form their own gang in the Ravnica underworld.
Just we have guilds, and we also have other smaller
factions.
criminal
Yeah.
factions, organizations, things like that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of variety. Even if you don't want to be part of a guild, you can choose a background from the player's handbook, and with your DM, you can come up with, how you still fit in Ravnica society. That's totally plausible, and you're able to join guilds later on if you want to as well. If some guilds have pretty strict ways of joining them, but others are like, yeah, more the merrier, please come.
So that's a great point. If you're new to the setting and you're not really sure where you're gonna fit in, like the DM, whoever's got the book can kind of like work with the player to go through the different guilds and their options and sort of maybe fit where your character's personality is supposed to fit in with one of the guilds. But if you have no idea and maybe you don't want to go through all that, you can start off guildless and then let the adventure just decide where you want to end up. You might, decide that the more you play in Ravnica, you might gravitate towards one setting or another. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There is still a lot of choice, involved for the players. Next we have
Kinner BR says the book actually has a flow chart that you can follow. So that's
it does.
Cool
oh yeah, it does.
feature.
You're right.
So maybe we'll show off the flow chart.
I have it right here actually.
And one thing I'll mention is we've got a couple people in our live stream in the Twitch. So if anyone has any questions or wants us to sort of look something up for you or talk about the book, we can always try to address that. That's why we're doing a live stream, so that if you have any questions about the book, feel free, type it up in the chat. I'll be watching.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. This is the flowchart that one of our viewers mentioned. So basically, it's telling you what's important to me, and then you choose one, and then you just keep going until you find a guild that works best for you. But I still recommend reading also through the guild's descriptions because they're pretty detailed and they're pretty cool.
Yeah, there's actually there's a lot in the book about the guilds and gives you all the information. Yeah. So there's a good starting point might be the questionnaire with the flowchart, but at the same time,
read about it then.
Talk to your DM. Patrick is going to go through all the guilds for us in a little bit to kind of give us a rundown and maybe like a brief overview.
Yeah.
But we kind of ended off on the races. There's some goblins. There's some centaurs. That's just cool. That's new.
We have the Loxodon, which are they're often associated with guilds that like order. They're pretty. Yeah. There we go. They're pretty cool. This one is a cleric, and they are very, very calm. They are all about community. And they're very slow to anger, so you'll rarely see a Loxodon getting mad unless, you did something to deserve it. They do not take betrayal very well. If you betray one of their trusts, then, they're not, they can hold a grudge, just like an elephant in real life, they remember everything or whatever that stereotype is. They have a pretty vast memory. Their tough leathery skin makes it harder for them to be hit if you don't wear any armor. Just your skin in of itself, kind of gives you some protection.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. So what are the actual mechanical benefits of being a Loxodon? They give you like a +1 AC, or how does it work?
You actually can calculate your AC totally differently. So it's called natural armor, and you get an AC of 12 plus your Constitution modifier.
Oh, that's interesting because we haven't seen a 12 plus con. That's
it's just that there's
what was that Dragonborn was 13 plus con.
Oh gosh, is that?
Oh well,
I've never played Dragonborn.
I'll look that up just for comparison while we're live here.
But yeah, they are naturally pretty tough, and then of course they have their beautiful trunk that can be used for various things. It's basically like another appendage that they can use to grab stuff. They can't use it to wield another weapon, but
that's an important point
that is
to
important.
Make. Actually, is you can kind of pick up an apple.
Yeah, you can pick up an apple and you can fiddle with stuff, and it can definitely come in pretty handy in roleplay and certain settings. But you can't use it in combat because that would be a little broken if you had 3 weapons. Although it'd be cool.
Well, at the same time, you don't get any extra attacks. It's kind of like if you have 2 weapons in one in each hand.
Yeah, you have a bonus.
You still have to have 2-weapon fighting, use your bonus action to make that attack. So even if you say had a dagger in your trunk, you still have to use the same amount of action as if you were using your hand. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it'd be more just like flavor wise, just like, look at me, I'm holding a dagger with my trunk, which would be fun.
Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah, that's cute. You'd probably cut yourself though. Now we have our minotaurs. So minotaurs in this setting, just like the goblins, are not inherently evil. They don't have some, demon lord that has influenced them in their development or their culture. They actually are very, very proud. They are still warriors and they do like a good fight, but a lot of them do have a very strong sense of justice. And a lot of them also have very keen minds for tactics and can be, found being commanders within certain guilds.
So the Minotaurs, do they get plus to intelligence? Is that one of
No,
their...
they actually don't. It's +2 to strength and +1 to con.
Oh, okay. Well, that kind of makes sense. And just for note, the Dragonborn, it's your 8 plus your con plus your proficiency. So that's an interesting difference in terms of how they calculate it.
One of the viewers, Keenan BR, so same one who talked about the flowchart, he said you can grapple with it.
Grappling with your trunk.
With the trunk. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool that you can do that. So that definitely could come in handy during a fight.
That might actually be the one major mechanical benefit then, is being able to have that free.
You also have advantage on smelling, on perception checks using smell. So if someone farts, the Loxodon is first to know.
That's funny. I never thought of the elephants have a big ass trunk out the front of their face, but I never really thought of them as being good smellers. Although I don't know why. It does sort of make sense. I mean, but they're not known for their smell usually.
I didn't think they were particularly either. I mean,
the forgetting thing.
Yeah, they're smart. Yeah. But anyways, and of course, the Minotaurs have those big ass horns, and they can actually rush, and then they can rush and do a bonus as a bonus action. They can use their horns to basically try and impale someone. Which is pretty cool. They can even try and push people away with their horns as well. Oh,
that's an interesting mechanic that actually I don't think gets talked about very much. It's in the Dungeon Master's Guide about how to push and shove things like that.
It's very useful, especially when you're in a city where can be several stories high. Hundreds in some cases. If you push someone down, bye. Like
we're talking like top of the skyscraper fights. Minotaur does a shove and you're fucked. You're off the top.
Boom! You got yourself a fight. We also have the Simic hybrid. This is a cool one. So
you were mentioning earlier that the Simic guild was one of your favorites. So there's actually a race for these guys too?
Yeah, so there are a few races that are found in the Simic Combine, but this is one that the Simic Combine made. So they're all about making freaky mutations and all sorts of things like that. And this is part of a project of theirs called the Guardian Project. And so Simic hybrids are also known as Guardians. And basically, they're humanoids that have been given animal traits to try and make them, more powerful. So depending on the mutations you choose, and they give you a list of them, you can glide like a manta ray. You can be a nimble climber. You can, become amphibious. And then as you level up in the higher levels, you can grow extra appendages. You can spit acid.
Oh, so they actually have a tiered leveling system for your race.
Yeah, just two. Just level 1 and I think level 5. Yeah.
Right on. That's pretty cool. That's sort of a new thing, but I like the idea of having a bunch of different racial sub races.
Yeah.
Almost, but you kind of get to pick and choose which cool ability you want to have, which do you want to be part bat or part cat?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, it's super cool, very unique concept. I would definitely be interested in playing one of these races myself. They're super nifty. The last one that's in the book is called the Vidalcan. Vidalcans are pretty common in some of the settings of Magic the Gathering. Essentially, they're these blue-skinned humanoids, a little bit taller than a human. They don't have any visible ears. They're bald, and their skin is various shades of blue. And they're kind of similar to what you would typically associate with a high elf. Very, very haunty. Very.
I was gonna say when I read the sort of the basic summary, they seem like kind of like the elf analog without being elves.
Very much so. So they're very smart, and they're very curious, and they're all about perfection and trying to reach perfection. They never want to achieve it, because if they do, then that means like what else is there to do? But they always strive to be better. They're often seen as emotionless and cold, but it's not that they're actually not emotionless at all. It's just that they're very good at hiding it. And maybe they don't want to show their emotions. They're very private.
So now we're talking Vulcans, Star Trek setting, kind of analogs. Sort of similar, like reserved, holding in your emotions. Doesn't mean you don't have them, but you're in control. And
and in fact, if you're a Vidalcan, you become proficient in the saving throws for intelligence, wisdom, and charisma.
Whoa, that's actually a huge mechanical bonus to have those. Like, you get those just from your race.
Just from your race. It's huge.
I don't think they've done that before with anyone else, where they gave you a saving throw proficiency, and not only that, but 3.
Not that I can think of. Yeah, 3 of them.
What happens if you have one of those from your race or
nothing? You can't get like proficiency twice.
No. So womp.
There are some abilities that let you double your proficiency or half your proficiency and stuff like that, and add that as well. But in general, no.
Yeah. Kenan BR says, as a huge fan of Ravnica, the Vidalcan are pretty boring. But then again, I'm not a blue player, so
yeah, they are usually found in blue guilds. So like the Azorius, the Izzet, the Simic.
Now they're blue too,
and they are physically blue. Yeah, it's a little on the nose. Now, there's another race that isn't in this book, but I've given the players that, I'm going to be helping make their characters for the one-off adventure. We're going to do the option of playing another race called the Viashino. They actually put them in the same article for Unearthed Arcana, but they didn't include them in the book for some reason.
That's weird. I mean, I thought that when they released that Unearthed Arcana with the races, it seemed a little late to be playtesting that when the book was coming out like 3 months later.
Yeah, there are some spelling mistakes I'm going to tell you in this book that I'm kind of like, come on. Like, you can tell that, even though I think it's still beautifully done and really cool, there are still some things that felt a little rushed. But even though the Viashino, which are basically lizard people, they're lizard folk.
Oh, well, I mean, we have lizard folk already.
Yeah, and that's what they suggest is if you
Volo's Guide, right?
Yeah, if you want to play as a Viashino, just use the stat block from Volo's Guide. But a lot of the description of how lizard folk act in their culture and whatever, completely different. Not at all the same, because Viashino, they're similar to goblins in a certain way. Like, they're very brash and very wild. They can even be very violent, but they're also kind of like squirrels. Like, they get distracted very easily. Their attention span is tiny.
So I imagine more like a little gecko who's just like kind of curious, like looking around.
But with very sharp teeth, and they know how to use them. They're often found in red aligned guilds.
Do they have a description in the book, at least for how to approach playing the race? Or
Unfortunately,
they just
not.
didn't include that?
Yeah,
I mean, fair enough to just point me to Volo's Guide, but if you're going to introduce a different concept for a lizard person, they might have.
It's too bad that they didn't add them. I do recommend the Unearthed Arcana article is still up. Still you can go and read just the description of what playing as a Viashino just roleplay wise would be like. And if you're Dungeon Master is okay with it, maybe you can even use the stats from that. But yeah, you can use the stats from Volo's guide as well. So that's it for the races. Should we get into the guilds, the juicy part, the really?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
All right. So, so choosing the guild is actually what they recommend. The first thing you do when you try and make a character in this setting. It's because the guilds are such an important part of the setting itself and of your character, and it kind of determines what are the likely races and the likely class that you'll choose based on that guild. So it's important that you kind of start with that first. Now, choosing a guild is basically replacing the traditional backgrounds. So the stuff that you get from backgrounds, just like some of your starting equipment, some extra skills you'll be proficient in, and a special feature, stuff like that. That's all replaced by the guild you choose. But on top of that, you can gain renown within your guild, and you get extra perks from being part of that guild. And on top of that, each guild has specific guild spells. So if you are a magic user, you get extra spells added to your magic list that you can cast. And that's just based on the flavor of the guild and what kind of magic they typically use.
No, that's really cool. Is that sort of auto? If you're a spellcaster, you just have access to these bonus spells?
You have to, but you have access to them, like they're part of your list of spells you can choose from, but you still have to prepare them.
Sort of like the expanded spell list they give you for like Warlock, for example. You have access to these additional spells because of the sub-archetype or something you've chosen, but in this case, they're being driven from your guild background.
Yeah, exactly. But still pretty cool that you can choose. You have added spells that you can choose from. There's also they also give you the option of getting contacts. So contacts are pretty important in this setting because a lot of the information you're going to be getting and knowing where to find someone or something is going to be from your contacts. So when you choose a guild, you also have to choose another friend from that guild, an NPC, a friend who can be in contact. You'll have to find a rival that was within the same guild as you, and then you have to roll and get a contact from outside of the guild. So each player will have these 3 contacts that they start off with just by starting off in a guild. And then even though you're part of a guild, and guilds have very specific philosophies and stuff that they look into, it doesn't mean that everyone in the guild is exactly the same, right? So it also gives you an option of styles of membership, and this is more roleplay wise. How do you kind of see yourself fitting into this guild? So you can be a loyalist, so you believe in everything this guild stands for, you follow it to the letter. This is who you are. You can be an opportunist. Really, you're just in this guild because you want to get ahead in life and you want to become a powerful member of society.
The guilds are the best way to do that because they control society so much. They are, kind of the driving force, and that's why there's conflict with the guild list you were mentioning too.
Exactly. So, it makes sense for opportunists. Now, there are some guilds that probably would feature more of these opportunists than others, but essentially they could be in any guild.
These general descriptions are basically designed to be applicable to any of the guilds, though.
Yeah, absolutely. You have rebels, so people who, they believe in some of what the guild stands for, but they want to make a change. They think that it should be going in a different direction, and you want to make your way up in the guild to try and steer it into what's more your values. And then you have anomalies, people who, not really sure what you're doing in that guild. You could be, like, let's say you're a wood elf, right? You're a Silhana, and for some reason you're in the guild, the Orzhov Syndicate, which are like the bankers, and they're usually pretty ruthless and a lot of them are evil. And so like you're kind of an anomaly going into this.
Evil bankers, you don't say.
I know. I'll get more into that when we get there, but yeah, they're not typically very nice. And not a lot of elves go there because elves, again, they're usually associated with nature. So but you could still be an anomaly. You know, it's still possible for, you know, you could be a wood elf that, you know, you're kind of sick of nature and you just kind of want to do your own thing. And
yeah, everybody's different. I think that's one of the great things about the core philosophy, and especially the current edition of D&D, where they're really trying to not limit player choice, let everyone have a place at the table. You know, no matter what you want to play. If you want to play a wood elf who plays against type, they're giving you permission. They're saying, go ahead. That's cool. That's you know, everyone should get to play and like have fun with, you know, the version that they want to play in.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's pretty much the general introduction on, you know, what you get for being in a guild. Now let's look at the guilds. This is the fun part. So we're gonna go one by one, each one of these guilds. We're gonna start off with the Azorius Senate.
Captain Scarlax says, "I want to be a nature-loving evil banker, just like in real life."
Just like in real life. Wow, that I'm picturing just like some sort of weird squirrel, just like just has a hoard of nuts somewhere. Yeah, that would be a fun. Would be a fun race, like homebrew race.
Yeah, just like, well, I mean, we've got Loxodon, which are like elephant people. So, you know, anthropomorphic races, I've heard, is one of the most requested things from the fan communities in terms of like, they're just like, you know, give us the tabaxi, give us the Loxodon,
yeah,
give us squirrel people and let them hide their nuts.
And I think a lot of them are for completely innocent reasons. It's just like, I just want to play a squirrel person. I think that's fun and funny. But then I'm also like, how many of these are from furries? And I'm just like, oh dear.
That's always the joke,
yeah,
I guess, when it comes to those things. But you don't have to be a furry to like anthropomorphic animals. I think it's just sort of a natural.
Are you kidding? I love the Loxodon. Like I do not dress up as an elephant for sex, despite what rumors may say about me.
You know, furryism isn't just about sex, Patrick.
You're absolutely right. How dare I? All right, so let's start with the Azorius Senate. The Azorius Senate in Magic the Gathering are associated with the colors of white and blue. They are very, very lawful. Lawful neutral, some lawful good, but usually the law is what they really care about.
Lawful's number one.
Yeah, lawful is number one. The Payroon, the original Guildmaster of this guild, is the one who first actually proposed the Guild Pact to be created. He was a Sphinx, a super wise, immortal Sphinx.
Sphinx lawyer, basically.
Yeah, he's actually in canon. They're called law mages, and you can play a law mage if you join this guild. Yeah.
I just want to see someone try to negotiate the terms of your magical contract for you.
And that is very much a thing that you can do, because so essentially the Azorius Senate now, Azor the First has left this plane, and if you follow magic lore, you know where he is, but that's not important for right now. As the current Guildmaster is another Sphinx. Her name is Isperia. I don't know how to pronounce her name. But basically this guild is all about the law, and they're essentially the government of Ravnica, like the true government who set the laws in place. And they have three branches. They have, what's it called? The Sova column, the Jehen column, and the Liev column. So the Sova column is it's the legal system, essentially. So they're the lawyers, they're the judges, they're the ones. They're the judicial system.
Yeah, that makes sense. The judicial branch, and then you know what we got, the civic branch.
Well, the next one is it's the Jelen column, and this one is the legislative branch. So they're the ones who are actually writing the laws. Now, a lot of people have issues with the Azorius Senate because their laws are becoming much more restrictive to the point where people are starting to lose their civil liberties. And you can imagine people don't like that so much.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
say.
no, I wouldn't.
So jaywalking is a capital crime now, kind of thing. Like,
Not quite yet. I hope not, but it's getting to that point, and that's what people are afraid of. Because the last column, you think it'd be executive, but they do have an executive like council, basically like just the higher ups of the bureaucracy. But the last column, the Liev column, is actually basically the police force. They're the ones who are arresting people for breaking the law. They have law mages that use enchantment spells to basically stop people from moving so they can capture them. They even have precognitive mages, so like wizards in the School of Divination.
So we're talking a Minority Report kind of.
Yeah. Pre-crime.
Pre-crime.
Exactly. And not as successful or as good, and it's a pretty new division. But to them, it's foolproof, and
This is literally the future.
it's honestly, Ravnica is us, guys. Now, if you're choosing to join the Azorius Senate, you're probably, the races that you're going to choose are probably either going to be human, Vidalcan, or to a lesser extent, the Lockstods. Human and Vidalcan make up the majority of this particular guild. In terms of classes, you could be a bard, a lore bard, so someone who, you're a good orator, which would make a great lawyer. You know your stuff, you know the law really, really well, and you're good at convincing people that you know what you're talking about. So that would be really cool. You could be a cleric, and there's a new class. There are two new subclasses in this setting.
Whoa.
Yeah. Whoa. There's a cleric, part of the order of, the domain of, the order domain. Gosh, took me a while. The order domain. So basically, you're a cleric and the clerics in this setting, some of them do worship gods, but a lot of the time it's more, being faithful to a concept or to a philosophy.
Right. That's
where you
actually
get your power.
One of the cool things about the approach in terms of the design of the game altogether is they didn't approach these orders as necessarily talking to one particular god, but more of like a general concept a lot of gods can fall into.
Yeah.
So that's one of, it's flexible that way.
Indeed. Now, that said, a lot of the pay runes, so the original Guildmasters of the guilds when the guild pact was signed 10,000 years ago, a lot of them are worshipped, some of them are worshipped and are seen as like semi-divine or entirely divine. Now, other classes you could be, fighters are pretty much found in every guild needs fighters to help protect their interests and stuff like that. Paladins you can find in this, and wizards. Usually the wizards in Azorius will be those associated with enchantment, because they're all about control.
That makes sense. So
or abjuration also, because protection. And
but if I understand correctly, the law mages kind of are in both lawyers and enforcers. Like they're sort of like a Perry Mason like detective /
you can kind of be both.
Hero.
But law mage, it's not like a class per se. It's, you can be a law mage and you're a cleric. You can be a law mage and you're a wizard. You can be a law mage and be a bard. It's more like a title than a class all to itself, right? It's more just for flavor for the setting and for role play purposes. Yeah.
So that's the Azorius Senate, the first guild on the Guildmasters list.
Yeah, so if you like playing lawful neutral, I could totally see someone playing this and being just insufferable, but just being like, Article 4, Chapter 3, but like just be really...
It sounds like a new take on the classic, my paladin is lawful good and won't put up with this kind of a
very
gaming
much
style.
Yeah, there's some gorgeous pictures here as well, and it even for the magic, that it tells you like, oh, these are spells that you can add to. We mentioned it tells you how magic looks if you're part of this guild. Like it, if you're a mage, a magic user that's part of the Azorius, your spells will probably look like, very intricate circles and lines and stuff like that, very ordered, sort of spell casting. Whereas, in a more chaotic guild, it might just look like fire bursting out and like shadows. And
I love that as a approach to role playing, giving you sort of little flavor suggestions to help you reflavor the sort of like the description or the look of your spells. I was just watching the Dragon Plus with Jeremy Crawford was the guest on, and he was talking about reflavoring magic in your game, and how the fireball that you cast doesn't have to look like everybody else's fireball. You're free to describe it how you want. If you want it to be a big green flamed fireball, that's totally up to you. Giving permission in the player agency, and the book actually is giving you sort of specific direction to say, hey, well, if you're playing in a lawful guild, you're going to have an orderly looking.
Your magic might look more like this. Yeah, I really like that too. I thought it was a really good little addition. Some cool images here. There, of course, just like any background, it gives you suggested personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. Of course, you don't have to necessarily choose this one specifically, but you can choose those because they do kind of make sense a lot if you're going to choose to start your adventure within this guild.
Kenan BR chimed in saying, become an allocutor and talk your way into a filibuster. That's funny.
So that would definitely be, like I mentioned, the bard there, the lore bard. They would be kind of a good thing because you're the lawyers, basically. But you could definitely go. They
posted this link to this picture here, so I thought.
That's fun. That would be an actual card. Then that picture is also in the book right here.
Oh, look at that. It's the same. That's funny. I didn't expect them to actually have the same art, but
I'm pretty sure most, if not all, of the pictures from this book are actual pictures that are on cards.
Really? So the art is inclusive there.
Yeah, it's gorgeous because the art for Magic the Gathering is some of the best. Like, really beautiful fantasy art. A big reason I first got into Magic was just because of the cards. Like, they're just so pretty.
Right.
So that's pretty much it. If you want to start off your career in the Azorius Senate, you start off as an Azorius functionary, and then, with higher renown, you go up the ranks and, you get more cool stuff out of it. I won't go too much into that, but it's pretty cool.
Nice.
All right. Oh, yeah, and if you're interested in their guild hall is called New Prav, and it's basically the tallest building from, like, if you look from the ground up, it's the tallest building in Ravnica. But it's really 3 buildings kind of somewhat connected to one another, representing the 3 branches of the Azorius themselves.
That's cool.
All right.
Kenan BR says, I've always wanted to be Boros, but I didn't think I could cut it there. It's a great bit of flavor for your character.
Oh, that is kind of funny. Because Boros is actually, thank you for mentioning that. It's actually the next one. The Boros Legion is a combination of white and red colored magic in Magic the Gathering. So white, they still have that order, that justice that is usually associated with white, but red is zeal and fire and passion. They are close with the Azorius because, they still believe in order and they believe in a just society, but they're a lot more passionate about it. And they can be really, really intense and sometimes, too intense.
So this is kind of the Smitey Paladin class, whereas the other Azorius Senate is more diplomatic bards and clerics, where this is a bit more fighter driven.
And even the clerics, if you want to be a cleric in this guild, you'd probably more likely be a light cleric, with the divine light and power, or cleric, the forge cleric.
That's a cool one.
Powerful weapons as well, because they certainly have a need for that. They are essentially the standing army of Ravnica. So,
So while the law mages are kind of the day-to-day police force, the Boros League is sort of the more the army sort of armed.
And that's changed slightly, like setting wise. The Boros are still police officers in a sense as well. They're kind of more like they're like guards, or think of them more like the national police. I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe, but they are still present in day-to-day life for the citizenry as well. But they're also, constantly at war with some of the other guilds and trying to, combat these guilds and their influence, especially recently.
Secret war, though, right?
Oh no, not now, because the guild pack is no more. So
I thought it was. I thought Jace was the guild pack.
He is, but he's not around. And
so in the current book's description of the setting, there is an actual like outright conflicts going on.
Absolutely.
So that's a great starting point for adventure.
And now the conflict is usually just skirmishes. Some of them can be pretty bad, but it wouldn't be considered all-out war, I guess, just yet. But
maybe getting close.
It's getting close. Yeah. Now, the Boros are usually good. They're if you're going to play a Boros character, most of them are going to be good. Usually lawful, but definitely could be neutral and even chaotic if you're just like, no, I just it depends on where on the spectrum you lie. You could be more white oriented, which is more lawful, or you could be more red oriented, which is more chaotic. So it's kind of an interesting combination. Again, the two colors of magic.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Where those you can combine sort of different philosophical takes between your colors and actually come up with a whole new, maybe a bit more specific iteration of things. Kanibr says they're kind of like the SWAT, whereas Azorius believes in the letter of the justice, while Boros believes in the spirit of justice. That's how they're described in the book, I think.
Yeah, that is a really good way of putting it. Is the Azorius, they are very lawful, like they're all about the law, whereas these guys they care more about
the good, and the following
what's
the
right
law for that.
Yeah, not necessarily following the law to the letter.
They also
which is where the conflict comes from with the Azorius.
They also said Jace is just a really shitty leader.
Yeah, so. He is. Well, he has other responsibilities and other planes and stuff like that. You could say that, but yeah, he is kind of aloof, or fickle is probably a better word. Now, the Boros was started by their pay rune is a fire mane angel. So think of an angel with beautiful fiery hair. Like literally on fire.
So by fire mane you mean like a mane, as
literally a mane of fire,
as opposed to being an angel whose mane is fire.
Mane's fire. It's both, but yeah, it literally means like my hair is on fire. She was named. Oh gosh, what was her name? I want to say Razia. Yeah. So Razia and all other fire mane angels are actually clones of her. They all look exactly like her.
That's interesting.
But they don't, and they're all powerful, but Razia was the first and the most powerful. She is dead now. She died within the storyline. And now another fire mane angel is the current guildmaster. Her name is Aurelia. And she's trying to keep things in order and in line, but the more red-aligned people in the guild, they're starting to push back. They think that they should have more authority and more influence and power and do more to protect the citizenry. And Aurelia's like, okay, but like, we don't want to start shit.
So it's not just these Fire Angel clones that are in the guild. There's lots of other races,
they're usually at the top.
They're kind of the leaders. They're the Council of Ricks.
Yeah. So same with the Azorius. We have the Sphinxes that are kind of like the top, non-humanoid power players in that guild. These guys, it's these angels that are kind of a big part of that. Each guild kind of has something along those lines as well.
Some kind of
they have creatures,
big main, more powerful godly entities that are kind of the higher ups.
Yeah, and they have creatures that are associated with them as well. So like, for instance, the Boros Legion, they have an entire, unit that it consists of people that fly these giant birds, and go around doling out justice around the city. So,
Nice.
yeah, so if you go against the Boros, you might have to fight giant bird riders. Just like if you fight the Azorius, you might have to fight people on griffins and stuff like that.
Perfect. Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
It's really reminding me of like Warcraft 2 kind of Griffin riders and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so if you start off in the Boros, you would start off as a Boros Legionnaire, and again, you can go through. Now, what's cool about this too is when you gain renown, you don't have to necessarily. You can choose to not move into like a different, rank if you don't want to. But it's usually beneficial, but it also comes with more responsibility in some cases, especially in the more the guilds that have very strict hierarchies.
Yeah, the more lawful guilds, I imagine, are a bit more expectant of you when you're the more you level up within their ranks. So maybe that's a good point to kind of explain how this ranking system and how like the renown works in the guilds.
So renown basically, every time that you complete a mission that has advanced your guild's interests, you gain a renown. And at certain amount of renown, you can get extra stuff from your guild. In some cases, you can increase in rank. For guilds that don't have ranks, you might not get a different rank, but you can still have a more important position or have more perks associated with that. And in some cases, you can actually choose different branches. And in some cases, you can actually have different paths depending on whether you're more, a physical fighter or a magic user.
Oh, so within the descriptions of these like renown ranking up systems, there's actually subsystems and different paths.
Like you can't become a law mage if you're not a mage, right? So
they have to give you other options.
Yeah, exactly. But they do have those options, which is pretty cool. So even within the guilds, there's different options you can choose.
Kind of BR says the book says how humans are really ambitious and capable, but they just can't beat those top supernatural type races and become the guild leaders. That's why they're not they're non-human guild leaders at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, a human beating a fire main angel in one-on-one combat, usually pretty unheard of. But you never know. You level up to level 20 and, you have a party and you have people backing you. It could happen. But in general, yeah, it's pretty much a guildmaster has never been a human.
So in theory, though, that kind of like leads to interesting potential in the role play of this world then is if all of the top tier of the guild are, these super powerful races, like where do we fit in as lowly individuals? We're all kind of just at the bottom trying to scrap around and make our own way while these much more massive forces kind of have the real influence,
the upper hand. Yeah,
we're being influenced along the way in the storyline.
You have to remember there are a lot more humans than there are these powerful beings. So they're more powerful, but it's a numbers game too, right? Because if enough of these weaker races come together and say that they want to be the rulers, and there are some cases where that did happen in, they're not humans, but humanoids, like elves that have taken over guilds and stuff because, they were sick of how they were being treated by these, quote unquote, more powerful folks. So that's pretty much the Boros Legion. They're super cool. Oh, this one is one of my faves. I love this guild.
House Demir?
House Demir. Ben, I think you're going to really like these guys.
Okay.
So House Demir, for a long time, they were believed to no longer exist.
Oh.
And that was actually supposed to happen. The Guild Pact specifically made sure that no one knew House Demir existed. That's part of its power.
So when they listed all the 10 guilds who signed the pact, there just seemed to be 9 signatures on there.
No. They knew that House Demir did exist, but it was believed to have disappeared and no longer exists after a while. So
10,000 years is a really long time.
It's a long time. Yeah, so it made sense. Like, yeah, sure, just one of the guilds disappeared. Whatever, like, we may do. But here's the thing. They were there the entire time because this guild is the guild of secrets. It's the guild of spies. It's the guild that is everywhere and nowhere. And now that it's been shown after the Decamillennial incident, and actually because House Demir was kind of unveiled and showed, haha, they've been influencing us from behind the scenes, that's actually what broke the guild pact.
Oh, really?
Because the guild pact specifically said House Demir cannot be shown, you're not supposed to know House Demir exists.
So because their specific role within the guild pack was to be sort of the shadow arm of society and influence and being that, mysterious spy force.
Yeah.
By fucking up and being exposed, their spy network crashed and they crashed the whole damn system.
But that was part of the Guildmasters' plan of House Demir. So House Demir, the Peyrune, the original Guildmaster, was the Guildmaster for the entire 10,000 years. There are a few cases where that is the case. And in this case, House Demir was run by a super powerful vampire named Zadek.
Oh, yeah, that sounds cool.
And vampires in Ravnica setting, not only can some of them drink blood, some of them drink minds. And that's a big thing in House Demir is if you ever see House Demir, you probably don't remember it because they took that memory from you.
Okay, now that's really cool. Like, I love the idea of vampires. I started running Curse of Strahd, and I got really into that. But at the same time, the idea of a vampire, and specifically like a psychic vampire, is something that I think is a really neat idea that doesn't get explored very often.
I knew you'd like this guild.
I'm also, I love mystery, intrigue. My first character was a rogue, obviously, and one of the main classes that I can see working in this are like the Inquisitor, the Mastermind Rogue. Yeah. Those are, classes that I've
any of the rogues really
wanted a chance to play, but you need the right setting, you need the right sort of campaign to really play a good intrigue type character. If you want to play a mastermind, you need to have sort of your DM support to kind of work those systems to try to work in that, but this book, it kind of gives you some of those tools because of the house.
Yeah. And it's super cool. I mean, this would be a great setting for the mastermind or the inquisitive rogue, but even any of the rogues, because they also have a line of assassins, they have thieves. A lot of the thieves, they'll steal artifacts and magical stuff, but they also can steal memories because, again, they deal in knowledge.
Is that one of the sort of expanded spell list things that they give you in this book? Is modify memory? That's pretty cool.
Yep. Now, so after the Decamillennial incident and Zadek's plan came to fruition and exposed his own guild just so, the guild pack would fall apart, he was killed. And now the current guild master is another powerful vampire named Lazav. Lazav, no one really knows what his face looks like because, that's kind of their thing.
Part of their whole shtick is the mystery.
You could even be a part of Demir or an agent working for Demir and not have any idea. The really cool thing about Demir is if you choose this as your guild, is you and the DM know that you're Demir, the other players won't.
Right.
Not unless you want them to, which that's no fun. Don't let them know.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I mean, there's always a tricky element when you have player secrets, but at the same time, if you are working with your DM, you guys can, come up with fun, interesting stories. That's one of the most fun things that, we've had happen in our campaigns is when I'll go and talk to Patrick with my sneaky rogue. We wrote him out of the story because, betraying the party is a bad move.
Yeah.
But, that's the kind of like fun, role play opportunities that can really make for memorable moments too.
Yeah. And Demir, like any other guild, even though, they seem pretty shifty, and they are, and, quite a few of them are even evil. You're not necessarily evil. You're self-driven. A lot of them are chaotic neutral. And, if your goals align with other people in a guild, you can even make friends still with people.
That's a good point too. Then is that you said you might not even know that you're in the guild.
Yeah.
Do you mean like people are influencing you to perform actions, or you sign up with a faction and you don't realize that it's House Demir.
Yeah,
Or,
absolutely. So
even
because now that House Demir has been exposed, people know they exist, but now their public face is that they're librarians, they're archivists, they're guides, they're journalists. They're people who work in information dispensing.
sounds a lot like the Zentarum faction in a lot
Yes.
of ways. There's a lot of parallels there in
Very
terms
much
of
so.
like the sort of secret motivations and
Yeah.
public faces.
So it's very much in that same branch. Now, so if you choose to be part of this guild, though, instead of pretending to be a librarian, they actually suggest that you start off in another guild. So you're actually part of Demir, but you're infiltrating another guild.
Right. That's what my follow questions was going to be is now, if you choose this guild, you're going to get access to their ranking systems. You're going to get access to their special background traits and other things that they're going to give you. But you're going to pretend that you're in another guild. Like you're not going to double up on those bonuses, though, right? You can be in House Boros at the same time as being in House Demir, or do you have to pick one?
So you have to pick Demir as your actual background.
Stat.
Yeah. But you will start off as like, first rank of whatever guild you start off as. You don't really get much from that anyway. I can't recall if you also get access to the spells that come with that. I'm actually not sure. Yeah.
That's an interesting question, though. Then, if you're pretending to be in House Boros, or if you are actually in, within that guild, you have to level up. You have to, kind of work within that guild system, even though you might be secretly House Demir betraying
you
them.
might also not be in that guild for long, because as soon as your mission or whatever you're trying to find happens, now that could take a really long time, and you might have to work your way up this guild. You as soon as that's done, you could just immediately leave the guild, and you just suddenly change how you look, you change everything about you, and no one can find you, no one knows who you are.
Perfect for the rogue assassin then, who has that it's a level 9 ability, but it lets you make false identities and things like that, which is I always thought was neat.
Yeah, and this is something that you, as being part of House Demir, actually get, as well as you have several false identities.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Captain Skilrick and looks like my love life joined House Demir. Yikes. Yikes.
You mean the fact that it disappeared or just doesn't seem to exist?
Oh my oh my god, same. Yeah, no, I constantly joke whenever I'm on Twitch with you guys that, like, the real reason I joined Twitch was to find a husband. Like, so guys, hit me up. No, you like blonde DMs that hair sometimes work. I really need to put gel or something in it.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, back to this.
Enough thirst.
So the classes in this, we already talked about them: rogue, shadow monk, wizard, most likely illusion or enchantment, and also the races, usually just human, but some half elves as well, because all of the other races are like creepy nightmare monstrosities that eat people's minds, or vampires.
So you could, what about mind flayers? I don't think there's a playable race of those, but
there are no mind flayers in this setting.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's yours. I mean, if you want to just suddenly, these trans-dimensional beings start taking over.
I mean, they do,
they do that.
Do that with the planes, and it just seems like it might fit in. But then again, they have their own faction and motivations with the Elder Brains and all that. So
yeah, they probably wouldn't do well with these guys
cooperating there. Yeah.
All right. Now next is the Golgari Swarm. This is actually another really cool. They're all really cool. I don't know why I keep saying that, but I really like the Golgari as well. The Golgari Swarm was started originally, the Peyrune, the first Guildmaster, was named Svagthir, and he was a Devkaran elf, so a dark elf. And At first, he was just, a regular elf, and he just wanted what was best for his people. But eventually, he started experimenting with the necromancy, and he became a lich.
Oh, well, good for him.
Yeah, a pretty powerful lich. And so he ruled for a while until he was eventually assassinated. Assassination is kind of, it's kind of par for the course. If you're a powerful member of the Golgari Storm, if you're stupid enough to get assassinated, well, shit out of luck.
So kind of like one of those honor-bound societies that really value strength and prowess.
It's not so much strength or prowess. It's more just efficiency. It's just like, yeah, okay, you died, and death is not seen as a big deal for the Golgari Swarms. Death is so. Golgari is a mix of. Oh, I should have mentioned for Dimir too. Dimir is blue and black, so has kind of the control of blue, but the dark seediness of black. Whereas Golgari is black and green, so they are all about life and nature, but they're also about death, and they see death as just a natural part of life. It's just an extension of life, and from death comes new life. So
even undeath.
Now, specifically, the kind of undeath that they're all about is like zombies, and especially zombies that are like fungal. So another new subclass that was introduced in this book was the Druid Circle of the Spores.
Yes, that's one that I thought was really cool when I saw
cool.
the initial, I think on an Arthur Arcana of those. They seem like a really strong, not only like story narrative way to go, but also cool mechanics too.
Yeah, so they basically are druids that are all about fungi, and they have spores that they can use to damage their enemies, and they can even, at higher enough levels, can even take those dead enemies and reanimate them as these, fungal corpses that are under their control. And there are some guilds that say, like, for every one of ours that disappears, the Golgari gain, a soldier, because their role is the waste disposal. And waste, shit. They basically make sure that the waste coming from them gets recycled and put back into the earth, and so that new life can grow and whatever. But that also includes dead people. So
they you drop dead in a ditch, they pick up your body, reanimate you, and make you haul the shit kind of thing.
They could do that, but on top of that, they could just make your body decompose, and they can grow. They're also farmers, and they're called rot farmers. And a lot of the food eaten in Ravnica, especially by poor people or people who live underground as well, is food grown from decomposing things.
Well, I mean, good mulch.
It's healthy.
Yeah.
So
it's dark, but it's still natural.
Exactly, and that's how they see it. They think that the other green associated guilds are too they don't understand life because they don't understand death, and if you don't understand death, then you don't really know anything about life. And
they sound like real fun guys.
I'm done. I'm turning off my mic. But yes, they are. No, the Golgari are, like I mentioned, Svagthir, first Guildmaster, was killed by these Gorgons. So there are Gorgons in this setting as well. Not a lot. They're a pretty small minority. And they ruled for quite a while until they were assassinated, and then so on and so on. The current guild leader is named Jared, or Jarad, or however you pronounce it, and he is also a dark elf lich. So he's the current guild leader. Now, the Golgari usually they stay in the Undercity, but they're starting to think that maybe they should bring their own brand of nature up to the surface, where they think they belong, and they often will, come to fight other guilds because they're trying to make their way up.
Fertilization is going mainstream.
It is going mainstream. They also have a lot of they're called the Crawl. They're basically these insectoid humanoids, and they're kind of like have a hive mentality. But the biggest part, they also have humans as well, but the biggest part of this guild is probably still the dark elves. They even outside of the hierarchy of the guild, they actually have their own high priest that kind of guides them. In the currently the high priest, I believe, is Jared as well because he is a dark elf. But in cases where, the guild leader was not a dark elf, sometimes they could come at odds.
So kind of like the Pope in the Holy Roman Empire, you've got your two influential factors, but the partly society, partly is governing sort of things.
Yeah, exactly. So
Kynan BR says Soylent Green is Golgari.
oh, that's actually really funny and accurate. They they do love nature, but this dark aspect does kind of tend for them to be more neutral, but a lot of them are also evil, or what most people would consider evil in a lot of cases. Their magic users are often given the title of shaman. So they have the druids. They have some wizards, specifically wizards working in necromancy usually, and rangers and stuff like that. But they also have rogues. They have quite like I mentioned, assassination. They have quite the, they have this actually particular group of assassins. What are they called? I think it's the Okron. Yeah. They're basically like specialists that all they do is just kill people. Like go and infiltrate, powerful members of guilds, or maybe even in their own guild that might be getting to, someone too big for their britches. My favorite thing though about these guys is how they dress. Like this picture right here, it's so cool. Like their outfits look like it's made out of,
like insect carapace.
Yeah, they also are very insectoid, but also looks a lot like fungal growths as part of them. They look so cool. Yeah, so if you want to kind of explore the darker side of nature or stuff like that, then Golgari might be the guild for you.
Kind of BR says, I don't know if you guys talked about that, but this book timeline is actually set in a few in-universe months, years before the actual events that are going on right now in the current MT, like Magic timeline.
Yes.
So a few guild leaders have changed from the book just since then. So that's interesting.
So actually, in this current, so where we are now in this book setting, Jared is the guild leader, but currently in Magic the Gathering, he's been killed, and there's a new guild leader, and she's actually a planeswalker named Vraska, and she's a powerful Gorgon. She's pretty cool.
Now, who are the Gorgons? Because I'm not familiar with that in terms of a D&D race.
So the Medusas.
Oh, the Medusas,
yeah.
Of course. Well, they're not playable races, but they are in the
setting. And if you fight the Golgari, you'll probably be coming across some Medusas or Gorgons. All right. Next, we have the Gruul clans. Now, we say clans because the Gruul clans, they're kind of weird when it comes to guilds, because it's not just a single clan, it's actually a bunch of different clans all together. And together, I kind of use that term loosely because they actually do work pretty independently of one another, but what they all share in common is their pretty much hatred of civilization. They're all like these environmental anarchists who want to tear down the artificial constructs of, that are plaguing the planet, and they want nature to come back in full force.
I'm going to go ahead and guess that these guys have green.
Yes.
And maybe red?
Yes, correct.
Oh, I'm starting to figure it out, yeah.
So they love nature, that's very green, and but they're fiery and destructive, so that's very red. Now, the original guild leader, the Peyrune, was named Cesarzim, and he was a powerful Cyclops, very, very strong, and actually a descendant of his is seen as the de facto leader of the Gruul clans. He's not really the leader in a sense, but he's the leader of one of the clans. And because he's basically the strongest, he he can kind of influence the other clans to follow in his directive. So if he's like, okay, we're gonna go burn and pillage, other guilds are like, oh, other clans are like, yeah, let's go do that.
Yeah, from what I'm getting from this particular guild is that they're more, how should I say, just a collective, and they I understand, like, it's kind of like they just wanted a seat at the table, in terms of the guilds, but they're more of an independent, loose association. They're more like there's more like a wilds section of the world, of the plane of the city,
and that's not entirely how they started out. In the beginning, they did have a function, like an actual function in society. They were the foresters, they were the gameskeepers, the park rangers, stuff like that. But then as more and more of Ravnica became urbanized, and much more of the greenery that's left started being protected by another guild that we're going to talk about, the Selesnya Conclave, they kind of lost their purpose. And without a purpose, you start to rebel, right?
You become disenfranchised. You just like you're a angsty teenager, and you just don't know where to put that energy.
Exactly.
And you end up burning down somebody's village.
We've all been there.
Captain Skylark says Mad Max Guild.
Very much so, except instead of a desert, kind of like ruins, and well, I guess ruins, kind of Mad Max, but ruins, but like filled with greenery, because nature is starting to take over again.
Important, yeah.
And that's their whole goal. Now, when you choose this guild, you'll also choose which particular clan of the Gruul clans you'd be a part of. Gives a brief description of each one. I'm not going to go over all of them, but each one has their own clan leader as well, and you can move up in not rank, because they're pretty chaotic. They don't care about rank, but like how you're viewed and how important you are in the clan.
Well, they call it renown, right? Mm-hmm. So it kind of works for no matter which guild you're in, because it's more about your reputation, and in these more sort of strength-based clans, renown can just be being more well known, or being a hero of the people, or being just known as a strong warrior is enough to kind of like rank up in your renown.
And especially for this guild, more so than pretty much any other, is how strong you are. And if eventually you get a super high renown, and you can challenge your clan leader, and if you defeat him, boom, you're the clan leader.
Nice.
Yeah. So these guys, obviously very chaotic, usually chaotic neutral. They're not usually evil. They do that. This is truly, they're just about nature taking over again. Humans, quite a few of them. Centaurs, because some centaurs want to bring down society just so they have more running space. They like to run around. Goblins, the more chaotic goblins will be part of them. Some minotaurs as well, some more wild minotaurs. Some Viashino too, and then quite a few giants and ogres and stuff can also be a part of them. Classes, barbarians, of course, lots of the different subclasses. Barbarians, clerics, usually nature, actually Tempest would also be a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Druid, especially like if you're Circle of the Moon, you're kind of more wild, changing into animals and stuff. Fighter and rangers, of course. Yeah, so they're pretty nifty. These guys, they fight a lot with the Boros Legion, because they've taken over a big section of ruined parts of the city called the Rubble Belt, and they kind of are encroaching more and more into places where there are people, and sometimes they will make encampments that are pretty close, and kind of being very brazen, and the Boros are constantly trying to push them back. So it's taking a big toll.
Yeah, I can see there being a lot of conflict there, just because you've got the lawful red, and then you've got your more chaotic but still red aligned, very fiery.
So you'll find minotaurs on both sides. So minotaurs, they also give you suggestions for which clan of minotaur you're a part of, so more, or like family tree of minotaurs, because some minotaurs, depending on their ancestry, are more likely to be in Boros or in Gruul. But yeah, you'll see minotaur against minotaur, those who care more about justice and those who care more about nature and just punching shit.
County BR says the Gruul are really tragic figures. The city grew and civilized nature, so their jobs were taken away, and the other Green Aligned guilds, and as their purpose disappeared, so did their protection. So the Azores began writing them off in the laws. The Orzhov began exploiting them, and the Rakdos began outright killing them and whatnot. So they turned against civilization, kind of out of vengeance. Gruul for life.
Yeah, you can definitely make a Gruul character who isn't just a mindless like anarchist. There's a lot of potential for cool roleplay. Like what you just mentioned is perfect.
Feeling disenfranchised and whatnot. I think that makes a lot of sense.
And a lot of people who weren't originally part of the Gruul, a lot of how they get new members is not just from the parents that are in the clans themselves, but people who were kind of shunned from society.
Other outcasts from society. I mean, you said, the Azoria, they make all the laws, but they're mostly humans and Vidalcans, and so is that a just society?
Or is that kind of
if everyone who's making the laws is human, are they going to make laws that favor humans?
Like, this is how wide your door should be, but what if I'm a minotaur with huge horns and I can't fit through this door? I mean, that sounds silly, but yeah, that could be definitely a point of contention.
We're talking about building codes, civil law here. It's contentious, nonetheless. So
we have city planning friends, so they would appreciate this.
Yeah.
So the Gruul, they are very, very cool. I do like them flavor wise a lot, and they look super neat. Depending on the clan too, you might look. A lot of them wear furs, and they'll even use rubble that they've themselves created as part of their clothes or their weapons, which is kind of neat. Yeah.
Oh, such handy recyclers.
They are. See, they care about the environment, Ben.
Yeah. Well, they are green.
They are green. All right, let's move on. Is It League. This is a fun one. Now, the Is It League, they're important because they are basically the engineers of Ravnica. They're the ones who are building the infrastructure. They're the ones who built airships. They're the ones that built the sewage system. They're the ones who, if there's an invention, it's likely that they're the ones who came up with it. But they're also kind of crazy mad scientist types. They love experimenting to the point where they don't really care so much about the results so much as what happened. Did something happen? That's what we care about. Did it end up blowing up in your face and killing some people? Cool. Let's explore that. But if it ended, what is that? If it ended in creating a new invention, awesome. That's cool too. They care more about the journey than the destination. And this is because they are a combination of blue and red. So blue, kind of intelligence and control and all that stuff, and red, just fiery passion. So they're very, very enthusiastic researchers, scientists, and engineers.
Nice, cool.
Yeah, the Peyrune, the first Guildmaster, is also the current Guildmaster because he is a powerful, immortal, super genius dragon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Now that's cool, like dragon leaders.
Yeah, he is called Niv Mizzet. I don't know if there's a picture of him here, but he's this super huge, super genius, kind of a huge narcissist, and he essentially is the one directing how the guild's research goes. But there's also a lot of independence. As long as you're following some sort of kind of theme, you do get a lot of independence. Depending, if you join this guild, you can choose to be part of any of these laboratories that focus their research on a particular thing. So you got some options there. But essentially, you start off as an engineer, but you don't have to be an engineer. You could also be, if you're a fighter, you could just be someone who's guarding the laboratories as well. So you have that option.
Has an interest in science, but flunked biology in grade 10.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the alignment, usually chaotic neutral. You care more about, fiddling with your experiments than you do about, helping society or doing anything like that. But that's not necessarily the case. Like I said, they are still the people who are building the city's infrastructure, so they're kind of essential and important. And a lot of the inventions that other guilds will use, a lot of them, the Izzet are the ones who provided it for them.
Right. So we were talking earlier about ways you can kind of hook in the different guilds between maybe your party members and why they might have mutual interests. So this sounds like a great, intersection of interest between a lot of parties. Is everyone needs a good engineer to
absolutely
make their plan.
Maybe the Azorius want a new interdimensional cage, and they want to test it out on this super criminal, and the guy who invented it in the Izzet is like, yeah, I want to see it in action. And, I'm the only one who can use it still because it's still a prototype, and you can go and test it together.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, most of the races are humans and some Vidalcan. The Vidalcan, again, they're very blue-aligned, and red is kind of the opposite end. So they can be part of it, but they're usually a lot more cautious than their human counterparts.
What color is this guild again?
Red-blue.
Red-blue. So they kind of like a, how do you say, mix? They're both their antithesis at the same time.
Exactly. Then, we also have goblins. Goblins make up a lot of the assistants in this, and they're often the guinea pigs. But they can be researchers in their own right. But they actually, a lot of them enjoy being guinea pigs because they're like, yeah, cool, blow me up, like whatever. And then
now it's really giving me Warcraft 2 vibes.
Yeah, very much so. Most of the classes, a lot of them are going to be wizards, especially evocation, conjuration.
It's too bad we don't have gnomes in this setting, because it sounds like the tinkerer type archetypal gnome would fit right in here.
That is very true. But don't worry, you still get some pretty cool toys just being a part if you move up in renown in this guild. So you get some cool stuff. You even get a flamethrower. If you're a fighter and you move up in this guild, you get a flamethrower.
Now that's a real good use of technology plus engineering plus fighter archetype. So yeah, that's great. There's options for everybody, no matter what you want to play.
Or you could be a wizard or a sorcerer. Like sorcerers, you could be a dragon sorcerer if Niv Mizzet has deemed you worthy of giving some of his power, or you could be a wild sorcerer because, an experiment just gave you magical powers. That's totally legit.
Nice.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. You actually get a spell was specifically made called Chaos Bolt. Here.
Oh, is that what Chaos Bolt? I've seen that around, but that seems like it would fit in nicely with this.
Yeah, basically just like bolt of energy that level 1 does damage, and the type of elemental damage, depends on the die roll, which is kind of cool. That's pretty much it for these guys. Now the Orzhov Syndicate. This one, they're nifty, but I hate them so much. Just like as I hate a good villain, these guys I hate. And think of if capitalism, it has its failings, of course, but now think of the worst capitalist society in the world. Now amp it up a notch. Yeah. That's the Orzhov.
So exploitative, don't really care about the greens or the environment. They're really about just making that bank and screwing people over.
Now, the worst part about this is that the Orzhov Syndicate, the pay rune, is still around. They've been around for 10,000 years. We think, because here's the thing, their guild leader is actually a council of ghosts.
Oh.
And they're ghost oligarchs. So patriarchs and matriarchs that just have gained so much wealth and influence that, and they just decide they don't want to move on to the next life.
They can't let it go.
They're material possession.
They're materialists, so they have to stick around as ghosts. Just it's kind of like you instead of getting buried with all your treasure, you're just gonna come back as a ghost and keep hoarding more treasure.
Yeah, exactly. So all they care about is getting more and more rich, filling their mausoleums with more gold, and they're pretty good at it. And so the name of this council is called the Orzhova, and the other so basically they're the bank. But on top, they're the biggest bank. But the really sickening thing about them, and sickening as in I'm disgusted, not sickening like the game, like yeah, sickening. They're also a religion. They see capitalism and fortune and everything like that as a just like the most important thing in the world, and how you
Right.
become a good person, and they equate sin with debt. So if you go to a church and you confess your sins to a priest, they will give you have to like basically like, oh, okay, well that sin is worth this much. That's
Right.
how much you pay them. And then on top of that, you might be a small business owner and you need a loan. Okay, here's a loan. Oh, these are the insane interest rates. And eventually, if you lose every single thing you have, all you have left is your life. They will take that too. And even when you die, you will become an enslaved ghost that works for them until your debt is paid.
Wow. So indentured ghost servitude.
Yeah.
This sounds like, yeah, they are clearly the most maybe subtly evil, but like they seem like they're all well and good. This is just normal part of society, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
and that's how they see it. They're very lawful evil, but a lot of them see it like this is necessary. If we don't have this, anarchy would run the streets. And we need to have people who put other people down so that, people suffer because they prop up, the powerful and the rich. But we need that, or else society would fall apart.
yeah, so there's definitely people in real life who ascribe to this religion without even it being an official religion.
Yeah, it's
I think.
very ironic in that sense, and that's what I love about it. It's that it's so poignant. Without maybe it was like planned that way, but I think especially in current political climates, it's pretty telling.
Kind BR says the Orazov have a real sick aesthetic, though. So we're talking about their
black, white, and gold. So they're the two colors of mana is, black and white. But but because they love money so much, there's lots of gold. They're very opulent. Their cathedrals are beautiful. They control a lot of clubs and small, some businesses and stuff. They also control a lot of crime, and a lot of crime, even gang members and stuff. A lot of them, work with the Orzhov either directly or indirectly.
Wait, a corrupt capitalist banker who's involved in shady dealings and crime? I just can't picture it.
How could it be? Yeah, so there are basically three branches. It's the religious branch, the the bank, the financial branch, and the crime branch. So you can choose either one of these three kind of paths to go from. So you become an Orzhov representative, and basically you start off as someone who's indentured to the Orzhov. So you're working for them, but you might start off indentured, but if you gain enough influence and you do enough stuff for them, you can pay off your debt, and even better, you might even become an influential member of the Orzhov. So a lot of people, can start off like that. So you can become an advocist. So that's basically you're basically like the lawyers that help with financial stuff. So you'll be involved a lot with the Azorius, maybe defending a client, or just drawing up papers for a deal. You can be an enforcer, which basically the muscle, maybe getting a bribe,
pulling a good shakedown.
Oh, they recently they've gotten a lot into protection rackets because there are some parts that even the Boros and Azorius haven't, have a small presence, so they're like, well, we'll protect you from the Gruul.
That's just a good capitalist opportunity. There's a gap in the market, you gotta fill it somewhere.
And that's how they see it, exactly. So you're probably going to be lawful evil, mostly humans in this, but there are some Loxodons as well. Because some Loxodons they're lawful, and it's white black, so the white part is still very lawful. So yeah, some more kind of shady Loxodons might be part of it as well.
I imagine this skill would attract a lot of the sort of aristocratic types. There's no noble background because you're choosing your guild instead of your background, but this might be more where you might fit in with that kind of flavor of role playing. And
Absolutely. There are very powerful families so the oligarchs that are part of the Orzova, even though they're dead, their families are still around. And being a part of one of those families is basically like being a noble. Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting combination of church, nobility, and bank. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty messed up, but
Well,
it's cool.
kind of BR saying, like imagine like you're also the Pope. You're the CEO, but you're also the Pope.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. Yeah, it's messed up, but it works. I mean, the Pope was kind of this. I mean, for the longest time, they had they're still one of the richest organizations in the world.
Oh yeah, they didn't get all that wealth just by being benevolent, religious.
Indulgences, when people had to pay for indulgences, biggest racketeering thing ever.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And I've been to the Vatican. It's gorgeous.
They've taken. You're right. These concepts are lifted right out of real history. So, lots of cool little like sort of tidbits.
Yeah,
like,
I love it.
Historical nods.
These guys actually have angels as well. They have a lot of undead, like mostly spirit, like incorporeal undead, like ghosts and stuff,
Whites,
and wraiths.
ghosts,
Yeah,
those of things.
but they also have some angels that might not have liked the whole Boros thing, and they wanted to become more like, they really want to lay down the law and maybe break some legs and stuff like that. So they have some like darker death scythe type angels that are pretty. They're very creepy, but really cool looking.
Like Angel of Death style kind of.
Just like you didn't pay your debts. / like, yeah, they're pretty nifty. The classes with them, we have clerics again, mostly order clerics, just like the new class, the new subclass. Fighters, rogues. They also have quite a network of assassins and stuff like that as well. And wizards, again, mostly enchantment, trying to control people's minds.
What's that angelic?
Oh, and necromancers.
Angelic class from Volo's Guide.
Oh, you mean the race? The Aasimar?
The Aasimar. I'm kind of imagining like a resplendent Aasimar decked out in gold, but like.
Well, look at this picture. Right here, this lady. Like, look, she's just like, yes, bow down to me, kiss my hand. Oh, you want me to give you a loan? Oh, that's so sweet. Lick my feet. Like, I love it.
There's definitely a lot of fun role play in this because you can kind of play that, well, I'm just doing business kind of character, but still have a lot of fun kind of being kind of evil.
Yeah, I mean, being bad is fun sometimes. I should know I'm bad all the time. Such a dick. All right, next is, speaking of evil, the Cult of Rakdos. Now, I'm sure you could tell by this symbol and the name. They are they're not the nicest people. In fact, the Cult of Rakdos is a guild that literally worships a demon.
Oh, yeah.
And this demon is the Peyrune and also the current Guildmaster, although he does take long naps in his little lava pit in the guild hall every now and then. But he basically everything that the members of Rakdos do, they do for their evil demon lord. And that can be anything. And here's the funny thing is they actually do serve a purpose in society as well. For a long time, they were a lot of the blue collar type, workers around the city. They were miners. They were, people working in different food industry, manufacturing, whatever. But they're also the entertainers, and that's mostly what they do now. Like they've lost, they're not so much mining and stuff anymore. That's mostly guildless now, but they're still very much in the entertainment section. So bards, you'll see a lot of here, people, but you'll also see barbarians that are crazed like berserkers and like strong men type stuff.
Right. I heard these are like the circusy type people.
Yeah. They basically everything they do is kind of like a circus, but a very dark, twisted, scary circus. So the playable races, usually humans, some goblins, some Vioshino, but they also have some giants, and they have quite a few demons that happen to be part of their circus troops as well. And, at first, sometimes, depending on where you go or the night you go or who's performing, it might seem relatively like exciting, but still, not dangerous. But it doesn't usually stay that way. A lot of the times at their performances, someone or something dies, and they can be bloody and gruesome and horrifying. But that's part of.
I mean, I dread audience participation moments, and this just sounds like a nightmare.
This is your fears have been realized.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I wouldn't want to go either. I mean, like those in the front row may get wet, but it's guts. Like, no thanks. But all of that they do because their goal is to spread chaos. Is they want all of they think that civilization is hilarious, and they're actually a lot of satirists, satirists. Sorry, I didn't know where to put the emphasis on which syllable. But they actually, part of what they do is not just these really gruesome things, but they actually, a lot of comedians, basically, like jesters, will openly mock out on the street, even on a beautiful sunny day. They'll just mock, a senator from the Azores and be like, oh, you think these laws? Oh, ha ha ha. And then people mock and like laugh with them. And then they start to think, oh, well, that is kind of shit. Right. And then that's another way that they kind of spread chaos and discontent.
I mean, from that perspective, I totally relate. I think, you don't have to be evil necessarily. You can just be disenfranchised.
Yeah.
And want to, in a creative way, point out society's flaws.
Yeah. So you have chaos. You could be chaotic neutral, but a lot of them are chaotic evil because a lot of them do enjoy the really dark aspects of like murder and they just delight in that sort of mayhem, and that is what Rakdos likes. Like that's how they worship him, is by doing things that he wants for society. He wants everything to burn and ah ha ha ha, look at, like, society is gone, let's just do whatever we want. And he kind of rules in as like the dark puppeteer to this circus,
ruling in anarchy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty neat. A warlock would also be a good one. Like, if you choose the patron of the fiend, would be cool for this one as well. And you can move up in basically what kind of performer are you in the circus, but also, are you just like a side act? Are you the opening act? Are you the main act? Are you the ringleader? Like, that's kind of what you would be doing as you're gaining renown within this particular organization.
But you don't necessarily have to be a performer type of character to be part of this, though. But
yeah, you I think, like, part of this, you do gain proficiency in like a musical instrument or stuff like that, but your class doesn't have to reflect that. Although being a bard, like a valor bard in this particular setting does make a lot of sense and would be a cool way to go.
I just wanted to point out, you mentioned making a pact with a fiend warlock patron or something like that. This particular picture from Xanathar's I saw, and I was like immediately inspired by it. I'm just dying to play a half elf warlock of the fiend. Now that I saw that image, and that's the other great thing about art is, like, taking inspiration and being inspired by these things.
Yeah.
And like, just from that picture, I was like, I have a whole character, and now I need to play this character, and have a great opportunity to engage with fiend patrons and do it in a way that there's a lot of flavor and other things that are backing you up in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, same thing for this particular book. You might not make a setting that's exactly like Ravnica, but you can take the guild, concept and bring it to your own campaign setting. It works in a lot of different levels. It's
actually, that's a great point about what this book is offering. It's not just a detailed guide of the Ravnica setting, but all of these guilds, you could easily transpose these or just reskin or reflavor them to something else to fit your own campaign, or just even the very concepts of them, this whole the two colors of magic and how they come together, what we talked about, like, where it matches your personality type, things like that. You can just take a lot of just really good inspiration from this stuff to kind of make up your own stuff. Kainen BR says, Daddy Rakdos just wants you to follow your dreams. If your dreams is to kill someone, then say, hey, a dream has never been wrong.
I wish my father was as supportive as Rakdos. He frowns on murder.
Aw.
I know, so disappointing.
You gotta follow your dreams.
I know, I should. But until then, I'm doing this. Now, these guys, they often, you can imagine, just because of their chaotic, violent, and often very evil nature, they do come at odds with pretty much every single guild at some point or another, especially the Azorius and the Boros Legion.
Yeah, any lawful aligned people, I would imagine they, being the Chaos Guild.
But that doesn't mean that they can't work together depending on, what threat or what the mission might be. It can still work. You can still have, let's say you have a Valor Bard from the Rakdos who is trying to bring down another powerful guild, like another kind of maybe more evil aligned guild. And trying to bring them down a peg or something, or maybe they just want to make a good story to tell at their next show, and they're going to follow this Boros Legionnaire and maybe go and do that. Like, it can still happen. You need some creativity.
See, now I want to play like a creative bard who just wants to go on fanciful adventures to get inspiration for my next chaos play.
Yeah, and maybe just slice a few people open along the way. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, you gotta have fun. You gotta still enjoy yourself while you're there.
She's just pretty. She's like some sort of witch ringleader type. Blood witch is what she's called.
Ooh, very cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. Next, the Selesnya Conclave. Now, this is the green-white guild. They are, I don't know. They're interesting because essentially how they started off was their role was to be conservationists, to help, protect nature, stuff like that, like similar to other green guilds. They were also charities helping people, the despondent and the downtrodden. But eventually they started to become much more religious, and they're actually now, kind of a larger faith than the Orzhov Syndicate. Basically, the first guildmaster, the Peyrune, is this entity known as Mat Selesnya. Mat Selesnya is a fusion of many dryads come together and is basically the soul of the world, literally called the world soul.
So, like, when you say fusion, you don't mean like I'm imagining like a bunch of dryads stuck together in one big
no, that is
pile?
That is exactly what it is.
Oh god.
Yeah, so like just a bunch of dryads fused together to make like this humanoid big shaped entity. Basically she's extremely powerful and is, it's the actual heart of nature. Now, Mat Selesnya kind of like slumbers, sort of. It's kind of weird to explain, but the voice of Mat Selesnya, the ones that like think again like the Pope, that speaks for God, right, is actually this being called Tristani. And Tristani is also a fusion of 3 dryads, and they're kind of fused together at the base, like kind of like, a tree splitting in 3. And then at the end of each one is like a humanoid figure lady with leaves as hair.
Sounds like it'd be hard to get around.
Yeah, she's pretty much stuck at their guild hall, which is the world tree, essentially, is what is it called? Vitugazi, largest tree and largest thing, essentially, tallest thing in Ravnica.
Even taller than the CEO headquarters
Yes,
of
actually.
what was it? The Orsov Guild?
Yeah, New Prov. Yeah, so even taller than that. And it's essentially a giant tree, but also a temple that's built within, around, and on top of the tree. The people who are part of the Selesnya conclave actually often live in uh, these small communes, like you mentioned communes earlier, Ben. They do live in communes. They're called Vernati, and it's centered around a large tree, who is has a dryad that is associated with it, who basically acts as, the in between, like the go between Tristani and Mat Selesnya. So basically, every one of these communes has a dryad that speaks and like gives sermons and talks about the wonders of being a one community where civilization and nature work together in harmony.
So like your local pastor who reports up to the
Mm-hmm.
main Pope guy.
Yeah,
the
and
Tristani.
exactly. And it is very hippie. It's like a church and a cult, and it's kind of creepy, but it's also very serene, and it is very community oriented, though. So they do expect you to, uh, you know, look after the guild first and your community first. Maybe sacrificing some things that you might prefer to do. You're expected to give up some liberties for the greater good.
Our viewer Bop Ramen says lawful good druids and communists. Very cool.
Yeah, they are very much like that. They are also probably the largest guild, and they are constantly preaching. And you can even eventually, when you get a certain renown, you can be a person that goes out in the streets trying to get the guild list and even members of other guilds to leave their guild to join you. Because they actually are fearing right now that something big and bad is going to happen. The signs are everywhere, and they want to make sure that they're protected and they're prepared, and to make sure that Mat Selesnya is protected, and that nature and civilization can continue. Yeah,
very
so
cool, very interesting.
They're really neat. They are kind of creepy, but everyone within the Vernati, that commune that I spoke about, everyone has a role. Everyone is seen as important. You might get higher renown and get a more important position, and maybe some perks that come with that, but you're not necessarily seen as better than someone else. You're
cool.
seen as more influential, but not. You're no one's better.
Everyone's got different skills, but
Yeah.
we still, respect everyone equally. So I can appreciate that.
Exactly. And you can even become like basically the equivalent of a high priest. They're called hierarchs, and you're just underneath the druid, not the druid. Sorry, the dryad, in terms of speaking for Mat Selesnya.
The dryad could be a druid. The class and race are the two key components to making your D&D characters.
So if you want to play these guys, you're more likely going to be good, often neutral.
I'm gonna go ahead and guess that the wood elf race in this class might fit in well here. A lot of them.
Most wood elves are. So wood elves are actually the ones who are also, most of the elves that are guildless are actually wood elves as well.
Oh, really? That's
but a lot of them are part of Selesnya. Most are part of Selesnya. There are also a lot of humans. There are centaurs as well, so the more peaceful centaurs are with them. And a lot of the Loxodons. Most of the Loxodons are part of Selesnya as well. You'll see a lot of clerics, like in life and nature clerics, some druids, of course. Some paladins that maybe swore an oath to, oath to the ancients, and even some warlocks. Some that might have made a pact with the Fae.
Yeah, archfey warlocks, that would fit.
Absolutely. So if you want to be kind of a hippie, but like a very influential, or part of a very powerful organization of hippies that cares about, they're all about balance between, they want civilization to stay, and you can see in all of their places, they have beautiful buildings that they've constructed, but it's interwoven with nature in such an incredible way, because that's what they believe, is that everyone and everything is connected. Even the inorganic buildings can be a part of nature and can live together in harmony.
Nice. Kind of BR says Celestia are nowadays more good guys, but back in the day, the Celestians were responsible for casting the Song of Celestia, which was a huge brainwashing spell on the guild list that made them complacent on cruelties thrown by multiple guilds. Every single guild has been a villain and a hero in all the appearances. So that's cool. Every aspect of society, is reflected sort of in these guilds. Every kind of like, I'm going through these and relating like, oh, I'm a little Celestian. I can seize those philosophies. I can believe in that, and relating to different guilds as we go along. But that's an interesting point. Lots of lore and history, because we are talking about Magic the Gathering lore. So there's years and years of lore and history that you can put into your Ravnica game if you're familiar with all that. But the books does a good job too of like kind of bringing up to speed on the important things for playing at least.
But you're absolutely right that they are known as being kind of creepy, and even that incident that you talked about, probably they probably still do it to a certain extent, maybe not as overtly or as intensely, but some of their singing and their chanting seems very hypnotic and very like, wow, that sounds so beautiful. Like, they are still a guild, and they still have a strong philosophy, and they think they're right, which means they want other people to think the same thing, and they're very good at doing that.
Hence the indoctrination, and
being part of this Vernati. Like, it's we're all working together, but it's also brainwashing. You're there, you're being preached at constantly. You're like, Matt Celestia is the only way. Everything else is blah. Like, it's creepy.
Basically, all of the guilds, hold a strong philosophy, and in a way are putting you down this sort of narrow path. It's not for the free-minded, unless you're part of maybe one of the chaotic guilds.
Exactly.
Bob Rahman says so all the guilds are kind of extremists sometimes.
But it doesn't mean that the individual is.
That's true. But I mean, each one in a way kind of represents a sort of an extremist viewpoint on a certain kind of philosophy. So
absolutely,
in a way, like that's why I mean, as a multifaceted, complex human, I relate to many facets of these individually. But you could choose one guild and maybe you follow, which might be more fun as a role playing thing. To have like a strong belief in a philosophy rather than just kind of being a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe you're guildless then, if that's the way you want to play it.
But you could also be like mentioned earlier. You could be part of a guild, but be kind of a rebel within the guild. Like, you believe a lot of what the guild believes, but you think it should be steered in a direction that kind of, maybe less extreme or maybe more extreme. Who knows?
Like exactly. You could be a diehard, like you said at the very beginning. You have the diehards who are kind of like really pushing for the order, but then you might also have someone who's just a little bit more middle of the road. Maybe you believe in those philosophies fundamentally, but not to the extreme that, some of the real zealous people want to take it. Kind of you're saying that even Rakdos, the murdering cult of demon worshippers, have saved Ravnica in the past. And
Rakdos has fought these evil like creatures, like they were called the old gods, called the Nephilim. He's killed one. So, because they were destroying everything. So, but that's mostly because he doesn't like sharing. But they share a purpose. I mean, a lot of people say that Rakdos, openly they'll be like, oh, Rakdos horrible. But behind closed doors, Rakdos provides services that a lot of people, would hate to see gone.
Yep.
So this nice picture. The dryad.
You can see that Loxodon in the back. Finally, we got a nice picture of the elephant people.
There's also, they have a lot of beasts under their control too. You could ride a giant, like a dire wolf into battle, or a Pegasus. There are lots of things. I'm not getting too much into like the perks and stuff, but you get some cool shit like for gaining renown in each guild.
That's actually something I really like is the idea of kind of like gated leveling where like, we're adding not just background
Mm-hmm.
where you get like a base thing right off the top, but you actually have these like kind of like goals within your guild to unlock
Mm-hmm.
further power and other cool perks and stuff.
And just
It just
influence
gives
in the
you,
city
yeah,
itself, right? Yeah.
great pathways.
Now, last but not least, because I mentioned this is my favorite guild, and it is the last one, is the Simic Combine. Now, the Simic are a combination of blue and red, blue and green, so nature, but also very, very kind of calculated, very smart and control-y. So the Simic Combine, the Peyrune is a mysterious figure. It was, I believe it was a Vidalcan, but it's kind of not entirely clear, named Simic. We don't know much about him. We don't know what happened to him. We don't know anything like that, which is kind of odd for most of the Peyrunes that actually we know quite a bit about. But the current guild leader is actually a merfolk, so there are mermaids.
Hey, that's cool. That's actually one thing that we had the merfolk in Volo's guide, but we didn't really have a lot to go off of. The Tritons, right? To kind of go off of in terms of where to put these guys in a setting. I'm sure there's somewhere in the Forgotten Realms that they fit into, but there's not a lot of aquatic campaigns, but this setting's actually addressing having these people in there for the first time.
So these guys, the Simic for a long time were also conservationists. They were seen to like protect the wildlife, protecting the species that live on Ravnica. Unfortunately, didn't do so well because, as we all know, Ravnica is now an entire city. But they still do work in trying to protect species, and now a lot more of them are trying to create new species and basically force nature's hand and give evolution a little kickstart.
Cool.
Yeah, for a long time they didn't. No one knew on Ravnica that merfolk still existed. They thought they went extinct. But underneath Ravnica, in the Undercity, there are actually vast oceans, vast underground oceans, and the merfolk were seen to still be around. So they've actually gained a lot of influence in the Simic, and now a lot of the Simic has to do with aquatic life, especially.
So we got cool like you saw in the picture there, like little eels and like other cool.
So clearly, like some strange mutant
mutate.
They're actually called Craxus.
Sea life.
Yeah, they're called Craxus. Basically, mutants, mutant species that they create. And if you fight the Simic, or maybe even if you don't fight the Simic, I could totally see a setting where, they basically operate in these things called zonots, which are artificial, like places where they grow and create these Craxus, and also artificial environments that they create for them, and maybe test out their abilities and stuff. But
that's a good point. In terms of this Ravnica as a setting, you've got campaigns that can focus around not only just like the guilds individually, but like even whole other locations, like you just mentioned, like vast oceans in the Undercity and all these places there. Like you could have a whole little adventure just focused on these little guys growing.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, maybe in one of the zonuts, one of the Craxus broke free and went out of control and started killing all the scientists.
Bob Rahman says, don't forget occasionally the big scary mutant sea monsters escape.
Yes, exactly. So that could be an issue that your party might have to deal with. Now, Simic have also for a while been the kind of the medics of Ravnica. So a lot of simple, hard things that might have hurt you, you could go and get healed pretty much from any cleric or anything like that. But for more serious medical issues, they're the biology experts, so you're going to want to go to the Simic, even though a lot of people are kind of creeped out by them. But
they have that proper medical surgery
Mhm.
bio knowledge to help you out.
Yeah.
Where maybe magic isn't quite there, but which is neat. In a fantasy setting, we mentioned off the top, how magic influences a world so much, and like, isn't it interesting to explore a world that incorporates magic into
Mhm.
it? But we still have science. We still have
Yeah. Although it
that
is
addressed.
mentioned that like when they do help you, it is still magical, but it's that they understand the science behind your biology to be able to use their magic specifically
Oh, that's cool.
to help you.
I feel like I saw, I can't I have no idea what it was from, but there was a movie I saw years ago where they kind of had something like that, where there was like a doctor who was kind of magic, and he had like magic gloves or something that let him reach into the human
Oh,
body,
cool.
and like he like used his magic hands to move the guy's organs around and save his life, and it was just like that hybrid of
Mhm.
of magic. I wish I knew what that movie was, but I saw it years ago and didn't even see the whole thing, and I just have like these vague images of it, and I thought, I was like, oh, that was so neat.
Yeah, very cool.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, I do too. It happens to me a lot. Now, this is another guild that, depending on what class or what kind of direction you want to go, could depend on what would your role be within the guild. So you could be a scientist, doing research. You could be a guardian. So if you're a Simic hybrid, or maybe you might not be a Simic hybrid, you might be just a fighter, and you're there to protect the guild's interests. Or you could be a deep sage, which are basically monks, who like they meditate on what direction the guild should take. The guild basically has this philosophy. It's called. It has a very peculiar name.
Bob Rahman says, I went to the Simic for my back, and now I have tentacles, which is cool, I guess.
Which is fine. Yeah, very much could happen. So basically, they have two kind of aspects of their philosophy that complement but also kind of contradict each other. So they have the hold fast, which interestingly enough is actually the bottom part of the kelp that helps attach them to a substrate.
Mm-hmm.
So basically holds you in place. So the hold fast basically has to do with preservation and making sure that nature stays its course. Whereas the upwelling, which is their other principle, which has to do with how nutrient-rich waters can create algal blooms and stuff like that, basically talks about how nature is a cycle and things are constantly moving and improving, and evolution is moving faster. So there are some people who might hold more to the hold fast, that they just should protect nature, where some are more on the upwelling side, where they're like, no, let's push like nature forward, let's make evolution.
Let's uplift our biology using artificial means.
Yeah. Now a lot the Simic is actually pretty, they're very Switzerland. They're usually they're very neutral. Most of them are neutral, and they try to stay out of politics as much as possible. However, that doesn't mean that they don't do politics. They do influence, and they have quite a network of spies as well. They, similar to Demir, they want knowledge and they want to know, but they're very isolationist, because a lot of their zonauts, only part of it is out of the water, but a lot of it is deep, goes deeper into the water, like an undersea lab, essentially. So a lot of their research is kind of hard for things like the Azorius to go and try and interrupt, although that doesn't stop them. They will still try and bring their influence there, but yeah, they try and stay out of it. Zagana, the current guild leader, and she's a merfolk. She's kind of more on the hold fast side. She's thinks that we should just keep our heads down, protect nature as best we can in our zonauts, and not cause too much of a stir. But there are other factions that disagree. Now, if the race you choose is more likely going to be human or the high elves, so they don't have a cool tribe name like the other two. They're just elves, essentially high elves. And almost all of them are part of the Simic, because they like nature, but they're also very smart, and they also like to apply that intelligence within the guild.
Got to use that plus to int
Mhm.
for good
Uh,
mechanical and story reasons. Right?
exactly. And then there are the Vidalcan are also part of these guys, because they're also very intelligent. And, now if they're kind of here, they're working pretty away from people who might try and stop them from whatever cool, maybe unethical biology experiments. Like, let's clone a bunch of people. Who cares? Like,
Mhm.
um, classes, druids, of course, monks, like I mentioned. You might not think it, but these deep sages, they basically are meditators, and they use their key as like magic, and they can use it to maybe preserve that philosophy that they adhere to. And wizards, of course, like a conjurer or a transmutation wizard would be really make a lot of sense too.
Oh yeah, of course, nice.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much the guilds.
Wow. So
This one's really cool.
yeah, that's a cool picture. I wish my camera. I wish the autofocus would work a little bit better.
I know.
But yeah, that's awesome. Again, I love the art. I love looking at the art because I get inspired to make an adventure, to make characters. You know, just looking through the book, I feel like there's so much here to go off of.
Yeah.
And to look through. So we've done the races, we've done the guilds. What else is in the book that's really interesting or useful, or
Yeah.
are there parts of it that maybe that have application outside of even just the setting? Like I think there's a lot of tools for like city campaign because it is one big city. So
there's definitely maybe even before that, just the section that actually talks about the 10th district. So your adventure is probably going to mostly take place, at least at first, within the 10th district, because it's the one that's the most detailed, the most described, and that's also lore wise in
like where
Magic the Gathering
that's
setting.
where all the action is.
Yeah.
That's the main.
It's where the politics
the
and-
head of the guilds,
Yeah.
corporate headquarters are all kind of there, and
Yeah, so it describes that part of the city, the undercity of it, how it works, like the infrastructure, and then it talks about the 6 precincts. So in the districts, there are different precincts. There are 6 precincts, and it describes some of the landmarks in each precinct, which guilds have more influence there, what sites you might see, what kind of shops or hotels or clubs or entertainment or even the crime and that you might see in the different precincts. So it gives you a lot of detail and stuff to work with there.
lots of cool ideas that you could, in theory, lift from this book and put it into your own setting, or even another city style campaign. I'm sure you could, add another couple of districts to like a Waterdeep kind of book, which is another book that just came out too. So I see a lot of some cross influence between these two things.
Absolutely.
That you could mash them together if you really wanted to kind of homebrew something up.
Yeah, and then the next section is just creating adventures. So exactly what you said. You can choose a location, guild villains. There's even a part that talks about villains that are not part of a guild, like guildless villains. Choosing a guild and how modifying your adventure depending on the party makeup, like who, your players, what guilds are they a part of, and that can influence what kind of adventure you're gonna make for them. Complications, so similar stuff that you'd find in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but just very catered to this kind of environment. It even says like, it doesn't all have to be kind of urban. There's dungeon delving if you're going to be going into the Undercity. There's wilderness like settings because there are parts that have been reclaimed, at least in part by nature, and like where there are ruins and stuff like that. But then you do have mystery and intrigue, which I think would be really cool. Disaster, like a huge kind of catastrophe that happened that could influence maybe the entire city instead of just a guild causing something, or it could have been caused by a guild either on purpose or accidentally.
Yeah, your example of creatures escaping, or
Yeah.
any random thing like that.
Or they accidentally built a portal to where giant monsters are coming through. Like you could do a lot of things.
Oops.
Oopsie. And then it goes through particular
that's a cool
dungeons for like each. So that's a new prov actually.
Nice. What's that big arcane symbol about?
That's the guild symbol. So each guild. Also, if you join a guild, you usually, unless you're like House Demir, you will almost always wear your guild insignia visibly, because usually you show like I am this, I am but that's the symbol for the Azorius Senate, is the triangle with the symbols and the circle, concentric circles.
Cool.
So then they give you examples of a possible like dungeon or place where you can maybe fight some Azorius folks.
Oh yeah, they give you kind of like their headquarters, right?
So this isn't their headquarters. It is actually it's one of their headquarters. It's an arrestor station. So arresters are, they're police officers. And this is kind of a place where they have a judge, and they also have prisons, and they also have like, the headquarters for the arresters in this particular, area.
Makes sense.
So maybe you're trying to bust out a criminal, or maybe or maybe someone escaped and you're trying to take them back and they've taken over the prison. It could be lots of things. The Boros Legion. So they have one for each one of the guilds. They have the Legion Garrison for the Boros. House Demir, it's one of their safe houses.
Nice. Makes sense.
Yeah. What's cool though about Demir is their guild hall is the only one where no one knows where it is. And actually anyone who goes to the guild hall soon forgets where it is. It's protected by very powerful mind memory altering spells.
Bob Brahman says, now I want to see Is It Weirds fighting Simic Crassus while the players try and evacuate the streets around it. Pacific Rim meets D&D.
Yeah, there you go. That's perfect. The Golgari Swarm, it's like an undercity mansion. Those mansions are cool. They kind of hang from like these huge pillars and bridges underground, and they kind of hang upside down.
Nice. Like the Southern Air Temple.
Yeah, very much like that. But grosser. Gruulkan's just one of their encampments in the Rubble Belt. Is It League, just one of their labs, or workshops rather. Orzhov Syndicate, one of their basilicas, just fancy cathedral.
Nice. Yeah, lots of cool material and maps there. So
a club for
every guild gets something to kind of base an adventure on, or have a point of reference for interaction. So lots of good material there for building your campaign out. So it doesn't give you exactly strict direction on a campaign.
No.
It kind of just sets you up with a world and gives you a lot of tools that you can kind of direct your own campaign and with the players in particular, which guilds they are involved in.
Yeah, that definitely influences a lot what direction the adventure and the campaign is going to go. Now, last thing I think before we go is just very briefly, the starting adventure that they give in this book, and the one that we are going to be playing on November 27th, is going to be Krenko's Way. Now, Krenko is this lovely gentleman right here. He is a goblin gang boss, so he's guildless, but still pretty influential in the underworld. And it's going to be up to our adventurers to try and do something about him.
See what they can do.
Yeah.
There he is.
Ain't he pretty?
Yeah. Timmy the Nerd says, running a campaign of this tomorrow. So awesome, Timmy. Patrick's gonna run this intro adventure in this setting Tuesday, November 27th, 2018. If this is something you're watching late, don't think it's gonna happen. It's other times, but so we're gonna run this adventure next Tuesday. And yeah, if you're running this too, like just stop by again and let us know how your campaign went,
Yeah.
or you can let us know how things might have played out differently for you. So
Yeah, because I'm assuming depending on the party makeup, it'll be pretty different. And this gives you things too on, depending on who is in the party, directions that they might go, and potential other hooks you can put in the adventure. So even after they're done,
you'll have somewhere to go with the if you want to expand a campaign. And this, I imagine it's going to be interesting then, just like if Timmy runs their adventure in with their party, your adventure is going to be totally different just by the guilds that are involved.
Yeah.
And then from there, where your campaign could go will all depend on that session.
I don't know. It could go anywhere. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be meeting with the players next week, and we are going to get together and we're going to work together to make their characters, and then we'll be ready to go. I'm very excited.
Nice. Me too. This sounds like a really cool second. What time on the 27th? We're aiming for 8 p.m. as the start time. That's usually when most people are free. When I say 8 p.m., we are in the Eastern time zone. So, we live in Toronto in Canada, New York time zone, Greenwich Mean Time -5, somewhere around there. If you follow us on Twitter at Can We Play Tweets, I'll tweet out when we're actually going live, or if you follow the Twitch channel, you get the notification when we go live. I think we're still all new to this whole Twitch streaming thing, but we're going to try and do
noobs.
more of this like live D&D content sort of stuff. So that's the goal. That's my guild philosophy is to
grow the guild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, are there any other questions that you guys might have? Those that are watching us. Thank you, by the way, for sticking around. Some of you.
Yeah, some of you have been watching for we've been streaming for almost 3 hours now, and some of you have been watching for basically that entire time.
Yeah, so we really appreciate that.
That's really awesome. Like that. Thanks for tuning in and everything. Timmy says we have an odd party: Rakdos human warlock, Celestia elf druid, Boros minotaur fighter, Gruul centaur ranger, and is it human wizard? So
that is going to be weird.
You got the whole breadth of almost all the different approaches and philosophies. They're the guys that I play Magic the Gathering with. It's their first time playing D&D at all, so doing Ravnica made sense. Yeah, I could see how that's another great thing about this book is we're crossing the streams. We're pulling in Patrick and I are much more from the D&D side of things, but like Patrick said, the Magic the Gathering lore is so interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of our friends that the players are going to be joining us, quite a few of them. Most of them have played Dungeons and Dragons quite a bit as well, but most of them are avid Magic players as well. And I think that's also a pretty smart business move from Magic, from Wizards of the Coast. Is they're going to get more Magic players playing D&D, and they might be opposite as well. Might get more D&D players now interested in the lore and just the beautiful cards and stuff like that, the art, and starting to play Magic.
Yeah, like I said at the very beginning, I didn't even realize before this book came out kind of the extent to which lore played a factor in Magic. I thought, there was theming and the cards, and it kind of made sense. Oh, you have these different colors and different approaches to Magic, and that relates to the mechanical styles of your deck play. And you've got you've got elves on cards and stuff like that, but there's settings, there's whole backstories and lore and all this other stuff that is ripe for D&D play. When they did those crossover articles in the last couple years, they had what was it, Planeswalker Innistrad, and a couple other very small, not this is obviously a much more fleshed out document that really goes heavy on that stuff, but I could see the seeds there, and that kind of it's just got me more and more interested in Magic. When I thought it's I gotta invest so much in these cards and whatnot, but I could just love it from the lore perspective, and maybe that's a good entry point for a lot of people.
Definitely. And I mostly play Magic now on my phone. It's what's it called?
They have they have digital cards, so you can play on an app as opposed to needing to collect the physical cards, which is like its own whole its own hobby. Really is.
Magic Duels is the one on the phone, like on your smartphone, or as an app. But then there's also Magic the Gathering Arena. I think is pretty new that you can play online. I think it's in beta right now, but I think a lot of people have been testing it out online. It's only on Windows, though. So,
Timmy the Nerd helped us out. Plane Shift, Innistrad, Zendikar.
Oh yeah, Zendikar.
Zendikar was another cool one. That was the one with the core, I think, race.
Yeah, the core.
And when I saw that, I was like, oh, I really want to play these guys because they seem like so interesting because they had their own little sign language. And I thought that would be a really fun sort of way to kind of approach, like a silent character.
How they communicate.
Yeah. When it came out, Patrick was preparing his new campaign in sort of like a Western desert setting, and I got really into the idea of playing like a sniper type character, and I was really like, I almost was like, oh, we can fit the core into the world, just so that I can have like a silent, because they're also very agile and like they like climbing and stuff like that. So I imagined getting up to a high vantage point.
Lithomancers, the stone mages, which are kind of cool too. Yeah. But I'm very excited that this is the first like official one that they put out is Ravnica. But hopefully, if this one's successful, hopefully they'll come up with more. Yeah, because I would love to, get a Zendikar and Innistrad book as well.
Amonkhet, Kaladesh, and Ixalan are all books that have the crossovers. So thanks, Timmy, for pulling out all the back knowledge. I couldn't remember them all. Core are awesome. I played one in a previous campaign. That's pretty cool. Arena's still in beta, and what else did it say? Bob Rahman said, I did it with my local gaming store last weekend, and we had 2 Boros Minotaur fighters and a Rakdos Goblin Bard, a Celestia Loxodon Monk, and a Simic Hybrid fighter. So cool stuff.
Lots of variety.
Yeah.
I like that.
Love it.
All right.
Any other questions for anything in the book or anything else anyone wants to mention just before we head off here? We've been streaming for about 3 hours, so hopefully we're able to, make this fun and give you guys insight to what's in the book. Thanks, Patrick, for giving us this
my pleasure
little preview, and I'm excited for this campaign.
I'm too. I think it's gonna be good. I think I'm excited to see how the players bring their characters to life,
their particular guilds, and what they're gonna do. So
it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and who knows if people really like this setting, we might try to continue on with some more live streams. And in general, we're gonna try and do a lot more live D&D content. Got all these cameras and everything.
Got our beautiful faces,
So thanks for tuning in. Just remember one final point. Timmy the Nerd says, remember, all the money eventually comes back to the Church of Orzhov.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's eventually we're all just going to be a bunch of ghosts with all of our treasure hoard.
Bob Roman says, you two are adorable. Oh, thank you.
Oh my God, stop. Thank y'all. You're adorable. Okay, thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed our intro and our talk on Guildmasters Guide to Ravnica. Come check it out. Check us out. Follow us. Go on Twitter.
All that BS.
All that
stuff
BS. Whatever.
We're supposed to like, hey guys, follow my channel.
I'm a YouTuber. Yeah, so obnoxious. But seriously, if you want to watch us play, November 27th, that's when we're gonna do this one.
Yeah. If anything changes, we'll try to tweet about it or whatever else. But thanks for watching.
Bye.